March 27th at 1:32, and we are starting our online Black Family Forum that we're so excited to have. My name is Charlie. I am from ChatwithCharli, and I'm joined here by my good friend April Whitehead, Pam Outlaw, Rhonda, Mick. Can you help me pronounce your last name? Sorry, Rhonda. Oops. Yes. Okay, perfect. And yeah, so we decided to put together this event, which is really just supposed to be a resource for Black families. We're going to be discussing two really important topics. The first one is protecting Black children from sexual abuse, and the second one is processing racism and social injustice for Black families. So we're starting here at 1:30 with our first track or our first section of the forum, and then at 3:30 we'll be hopping on for the next one, and we'll have a different set of panelists. So yes, like I said, my name is Charlene, but my nickname is Charlie. I have a platform called ChatwithCharli where I seek to provide marriage, relationship, and personal growth advice for Black millennials. So definitely join me over. I'm most active on Instagram. You can also check out my Facebook page at the official ChatwithCharli and www.chatwithcharli.com. And I am joined by my lovely co-host, April Whitehead. You can go ahead and introduce yourself, April.
Hello, I am April Whitehead. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. And over the last 10 years, I've worked in schools, hospitals, private practice settings. I like working with adults, adolescents, and families dealing with anxiety, depression, transition of life issues, also just career support needs, racial trauma, infertility, cultural identity. I have a deep passion for supporting women of color like myself. And most recently, I've been at home with my two daughters, 2 and 4. But I look forward to getting more active in the Orlando mental health community. So yeah, that is me.
All right, guys, so we are going to start off by just sharing with you who our panelists are. And I'm going to share my screen really quickly so that you guys can get to know them and a little bit about their background. So hopefully everyone is able to see my screen. So our first panelist is Pam Outlaw, and she is a trauma advocate. She serves with CREW for 20 years in various roles. She currently is partnered with Samaritan's Village, which is a safe home and therapeutic program. A therapeutic program for adult survivors of sexual trafficking. She has a passion for social justice and being a voice for those who are voiceless. Next, we have Rhonda McLaughlin. She is a licensed mental health counselor and licensed therapist. Rhonda is licensed here in the state of Florida, and she has years of experience working alongside women of color as they search for identity, healing, and hope. She has received continuing education training in cultural competence and human trafficking. Rhonda worked as a private self-contractor and district counselor for Seminole County Public Schools. She currently offers teletherapy and serves as an adult instructor for St. Leo University, teaching a general education psychology course. Rhonda also received her Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of Central Florida and her Master's of Arts in Counseling from Reformed Theological Seminary in Oviedo, Florida. In her spare time, Rhonda loves to cook, read, exercise, and listen to music. And then lastly, we will have joining us in about 20 minutes, Tenisa Montgomery, who has her master's degree in education. She's also a licensed mental health counselor. She is CCTP certified, and she is a trauma therapist. Tenisa is the founder of Mothers and Nurtures Counseling Solutions currently, and she has a master's degree, as I mentioned, a Master's of Science in Education in the field of clinical mental health counseling from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mothers Nurtures Counseling Solutions is located in Maitland, Florida, and they specialize in the transition of life phases. They also provide counseling, consulting, and mental health assessments for a variety of purposes, testing anxiety, medical procedures, self-improvement and court order evaluation. So that is just a quick overview of our panelists before we get started with our first topic, like we said, which is protecting Black children from sexual abuse. So let's learn a little bit more about what we'll be talking about before we dive in.
Okay, we are talking about protecting Black children from sexual abuse. Just a couple things to say before we jump in. This is a heavy topic. This is not a light topic. And so I understand that there may be people who are listening who this might be triggering for them. Also, some people may be sharing personal stories, things like that. And so I just want to give a warning of if you feel triggered, if you start to feel panicky, shortness of breath, flashbacks, those sort of things, please pause, mute, step away, and try to do some grounding exercises. What do you, for example, what things do you see around you? What things can you hear? What things do you taste to kind of help calm yourself? And I would advise you to reach out to a supportive person or something like that, if that happens. Secondly, we do not have a monopoly on this topic. We are sharing only our specific skill set, our specific experience, our specific training and expertise. So please do not take this as an end-all be-all set of information. This is hopefully to provide you with more support, more resources, but I also advise you take what you get from here and talk about it within your friends, your community, get their insight, their wisdom. If you're a person of faith, pray about this, seek wisdom, and then kind of decide what you want to do with the information. And that's basically what I wanted to share. So we'll just jump into our first discussion question. For our panelists, what are, for the caregivers and parents out there that are wondering, what are some stats about sexual abuse in Black children? What is some of the information out there that makes this topic relevant?
So I remember when we were given these questions and I was researching, a lot of the information, the statistics, kind of lacking the support. So it's really, so without spending, days and weeks on end on figuring out what it actually is the answers to this. There is some statistics out there, but coming from my background, which teaches you a lot about statistics, and when you quote someone, you really have to go back to their statistics and go back to where did they actually get that information on. So just the information that I read, I was just very uncomfortable with quoting because they were very much dated. And I was very surprised that there weren't any up-to-date statistics on this subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Pam, did you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, no, I didn't have any.
Okay. I agree with you, Rhonda. There was one article, which I did add it to the resource guide. And the title of the article is, "Where are the Black Girls in Our CSA Services Studies and Statistics?" So CSA, Child Sexual Abuse. And this article basically says what you were just saying, Rhonda, that there is a lack of awareness just because of the over-sexualization of Black girls at a younger age, that there can be a tendency to not even notice or wonder, to ask the question and not even see it as something to be of concern. And so if that's something you want to hear more about, if you look in our resource guide, just for our attendees, number 3 actually links to an article about that. Yeah, so we can move on to the next question.
Yeah, what I wanted to say quickly is I think that that's a big problem, and it's a historical problem especially seeing young Black girls as victims in the first place. And so sexuality is, even at a young age, it's really not sexual, but nonetheless, it's not a big deal. It's not important. So of course, we're not going, society is not going to focus on it. So it's really up to parents to really be in tune with their, especially, I mean, I know this happens to boys as well, but
yeah,
I guess it's predominantly girls that, are sought after. And so we have to be really, really, really focused on our young Black girls. And you can't start asking questions when they're 16 or 17. It has to definitely start at a young age, and seeing them that they are victims and they have been victimized.
Yeah.
Right, and thank you for sharing that, Rhonda. I did want to say, because we haven't mentioned it so far, if you are someone who did register for this event via www.chatwithcharli.com, you will be sent and have already been sent a resource guide, which is going to contain a ton of information, like community resources for you, websites that you can go to, book recommendations, and videos that you can sit down and watch with your children. But as we move forward in the discussion, so we already talked a little bit about the stats, and that obviously young Black girls are more sexualized in our society than young Black boys are. Although, as a boy mom, I do want to say this information does apply to those who have, Black children in general. I think are lower priority when it comes to protecting, which is why we're doing this, right? But should we be talking about body safety at different ages? So if we could just kind of go broad spectrum, sort of like 0 to 5-ish, 5 to 12, and then maybe 12 on, to kind of help people to know what should we be teaching our children about their bodies from a foundational perspective. I know, Rhonda, you said don't just start at 16. So then if we start sort of from birth, what are some of the messages that we should be communicating?
I think we should be consistent with our words. So I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. So at a very early age, I used the proper term of the body parts. I didn't say wee-wee, I said penis. So I think that's important to, give a name to the body parts. And a lot of people like to use nicknames, and I felt better to just be consistent, so I don't change. It's going to be your penis when you are 2. It's going to be your penis when you are 10, and it's going to be your penis when you are, 17. So having that consistent dialogue is going to be helpful, and even starting at an early age, in time that you have to do it in terms of their intellectual age. So you can't. It can't be too heavy between the ages of a toddler into 5. So you have to know your child and know this is appropriate for them to understand this, this information at this point. So starting early is always good, having the proper names of the body parts and letting them know at an early age, this is your body, and teaching them how to create like sort of I call it red flags, but creating this, like, if you don't feel, if you're uncomfortable because Uncle Charlie did this to you, then you have the right to feel uncomfortable, and you have the right to tell someone.
Right, 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 absolutely. So giving them a voice, essentially, which I think, when we look at from a cultural perspective and everything that Black people have been through in this country, I think that's so important, and I think that's something that can be overlooked. Because we are in 2021, and let's just be real, previous generations, we weren't always comfortable with having a voice, okay? We were still sort of in submission to these factors, even though we weren't physically shackled. In a lot of ways, we were psychologically shackled, spiritually shackled. And so I think in our culture, we're very used to being submissive. And if we're not careful, we can end up sort of passing down that submissive mentality to our children. You are not to be heard. Your feelings do not matter. Those types of things, and getting them sort of even prepped, if you will, for being okay with being violated. And so I like what I hear you saying, Rhonda, letting them know that this is your body and you do have a voice at a very young age. So as we move into the older ages, are there other things that we need to consider? So we kind of tackled the younger children, identifying their body parts, but as we move into older age ranges, and we're getting into puberty, and we're getting into developmental changes and hormonal changes, how should the message change at that point?
I don't think it necessarily changes. I think it's because the child is not much of a child anymore, they're young adults, but we can assume that they already know this, or the school has taught them about this. So still having that open dialogue and having them feel comfortable to go to you to talk about their bodies, sexual matters, and not making them feel like it's a shameful thing to do. So, and again, all this really is tied into what type of relationship you have with your child to begin with. Because if you have a ratty relationship with your child, don't expect your child to open up and come to you at 15 when you haven't been proactive in their lives from 0 to 15. So it's like, it's not some like overnight miracle thing that, oh, my child's going to come to me and tell me everything. You have to be that consistent person in their life to begin with, that foundation. And so a lot of that really is going to depend on what type of a parent you've been. It's not automatic because you're the parent that they're going to reach out and open up to you. So it's very important to be a parent as best as you can. Now, I'm not saying it's the perfect parent, but that ties into a young adult wanting to share these things with you and talk about their bodies, that changes. They'll go to someone else. They'll go to their parent. They'll go to their peers or someone else's mother.
Right, and then you'll be left out. And so from a practical standpoint, one of the things that we try and do, so I'm a boy mom, but my sons are younger. They are 4 and 6 years old. And so when we pick them up from school, every single day, there is a question of how was school? Sometimes even for my younger son, it'll be, was anyone mean to you? That's on his level. Asking those questions on a consistent basis, because you'll be surprised that things can even fall through the cracks, and there might be weeks later where they might say, oh, this person hit me, or this happened, and say, oh, what, really, what happened? And even at that age, things can fall through the cracks. And so I love what we're talking about, because as a parent, we sometimes think that these things are isolated. But no, the communication piece that you have with your child is also connected to protecting them from sexual abuse, right? Because you're creating an environment where if something happens, they're able to open up to you. So it's sort of like a holistic approach, rather than just assuming that the protection starts if something happens. The protection actually starts in the foundation of parenthood and how you develop that bond with your child. So I really like what you're saying.
Exactly.
It makes me think about the idea of like you're working a muscle. And if you for 10 years never tapped into that muscle, and then you're trying to jump into it at 11, 12, that's a shock factor. And your child doesn't even have that lane developed, that conversation. And then the two of you haven't developed it either. So yeah, it's a muscle. That's what it makes me think of. Just a muscle that has to be worked from as soon as, even before they can talk, but as soon as they can talk, it really makes me think a lot about boundaries and how we are helping our children understand that their body is their body and they can decide what the boundaries are for their own body, and that we can help them figure out, like you were saying, Rhonda, what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable.
Right.
There's something that I do with my daughter. Sometimes if she says, for example, if she says, oh, I didn't like that, I will just repeat what she said. You know, oh, that person did this. You didn't like that. You didn't like that. And so just kind of giving her room and space to say, like, it's okay to say you didn't like something to me. And you can repeat it, and I'll even remind her later on if she does something. I'll be like, you didn't like that, right? And she'll say, yeah, I didn't like when that person did that. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. You didn't like it. And just kind of opening up that she can say to me that something that an adult did to her, she didn't like. Or even an older child, or even a peer, a child that's the same age as her, right? Because that can be, abuse can happen in those settings.
Right.
Also.
Sure.
Right.
And so to answer your initial question, with the older, it doesn't really change. It's going to look different because the dialogue is going to be more intense and more information. And so because you're, you know, at some point you feel like you're speaking to a young adult because they have so much, you know, they feel like they have a lot of knowledge, even though sometimes they don't. But again, we don't assume what they know, because a lot of times they'll get information from peers who may not know a whole bunch themselves either. So it's good to always check in when you can and be that safe place for them to come to have these conversations with.
So are you saying almost in some situations, you may feel like as a parent that you're over explaining? As in, you're saying don't assume that there's information that they know just because they're 16.
Correct.
Okay.
And I mean, and it would be nice to know what they know, but a lot of times, you know, they get to that age where they don't share everything.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I even remember, April, in the talk that we went to, which spurred us on to do this one, they even said that, you know, by the time your child is 8, they're going to be taking in so much information from the environments that they're in about sex and sexuality. You sort of want to get in there early. And so I think that's another practical point that people can walk away with this is, you know, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, or you like it or you don't like it, if your child is in school, or even if they're visiting family, even if they're visiting friends, at some point along the line, around the age of 8, 10 years old, your child is going to take in information about their body, other people's bodies, sexuality, sex identity, all of those things. And so you do want to start these discussions early so that you can lay a foundation, so that even when they're in those conversations, they have some information to even share with their peers, so that they already know what these body parts are, so that they already know what sex means, so that they already know these things from your mouth, from your perspective, so that you don't have to fear that they're going to end up with their foundation being messed up because they got it from someone else. So that's just a practical thing that we could do as we kind of move on the next level and start talking about more boundaries and things of that sort.
I was just going to say I agree, because communication is very key. And just how trafficking and abuse kind of go together, because many women that I've worked with, they've been abused at a young age and they never told anybody, and it's just a trauma that they have lived with, and they just keep it down. And so I even heard from a conference someone say that, well, if they were abused when they were little and then they get caught in traffic when they're older, they're like, well, at least I'm getting paid to be abused. And no, it's total distortion, but that's the way that they can see it.
Right. Okay, so as we talked about sort of those foundational things about what we should be communicating to our child, and even keeping the lines of communication open. So when it comes to boundaries, what are some healthy boundaries that we can put into place to help our children to feel comfortable and to be less susceptible to sexual abuse?
Well, one of the things that really pop up in my mind is that we tend to be too trusting with people. Like people automatically get our trust. They don't really earn it. And I say, as far as, you know, it could be family members, it could be clergy, it could be close friends that you've known since, you know, you were in kindergarten. We have to sort of get rid of that concept that we have to trust everyone with our kids. Because a lot of these abuse stories that especially ones that I've heard, they've come from family members, close family members, people in the community who you're supposed to trust, such as clergy, or even friends of family. These people are abusing our kids, and we don't think that they are, because we are picturing an abuser, this nasty, ugly stranger, but that's really not the case. And always, I mean, certainly in some instances, but yeah, it's the familiar people that we trust. And so we don't, you know, we drop off our kids and we assume that everything's going to be okay. We don't ask questions. And so I think a boundary for us is to not automatically trust someone.
That's good.
Nice. Okay, so from the parent's perspective, first boundary is not automatically trusting. Okay, I love that. Because again, when we look at our culture as a Black community, like you said, trust sometimes is given based off of position. And in fact, that's not something that's unique to just us, but we're just talking traditionally when it comes to, again, religious communities, clergy, and things of that sort, and family members. And I also do want to bring up the fact that sometimes it's just a lack of resources and help where people have put their children in positions simply because they have to do what they have to do to go to work. They don't have many other resources. We know the case of, you know, perhaps a single mother. Okay, she has a boyfriend, a family member. She doesn't have much help and support and has left her child in a situation that's less than ideal. She may even know that it's less than ideal. And unfortunately, you know, abuse happens. And so we do want to recognize those things. And again, definitely, even after the call is over, or even after this forum is over, go to ChatwithCharli and register so that you can get access to this resource guide. Because as we go throughout this time, there are going to be resources for you to kind of get plugged in to get additional help if you are in some of these situations. We don't want to just leave you out there. Okay, so let's continue that talk on boundaries. Are there things that we need to communicate to our children about boundaries that they should have? Like what does that conversation look like with them?
I also think it's kind of tied into what we had just talked about, them being comfortable with their bodies. It's like letting them know that they can articulate boundaries with other people. So if they're in a position where someone is touching them in a way that they feel uncomfortable, they can create boundaries by saying, no, I don't feel comfortable. Well, you know, so depending on the age, you're going to say whatever you're going to, you know, say appropriately. But yeah, it's okay for you to create boundaries.
Right.
So in helping them figure out, well, what would that boundary look like as well, helping them create, you know, because they may not know where to even begin.
Right.
So for example, one of the boundaries I had with my own children, if they went to someone's house, I said, do you feel comfortable if you're playing with a bunch of girls and boys and you're all the same age, having that door closed? See, so if they're in the bedroom and it's a bunch of kids, it's like having that door open. That's kind of like a boundary.
Right.
Do you feel comfortable when the door's closed?
Right.
Yes. Well, if that door is closed, you say something, you get up, you open the door. If there's an issue, you talk to the closest adult who's in charge of you, or you know, let me know right away. So, so that's a way of creating a boundary.
Yeah, that is.
Right. I know with older kids, right. I know with our sons, and again, they're 4 and 6, we let them know when you go to school, you know, obviously the rules are what the rules are, okay? If someone, you know, does something, you don't hit them back according to the school rules, okay? But what you can do is, but what you can do is you can talk to that person and say, no, I do not like this. No, do not hit me anymore. And see, I think, again, that's important because kids don't want to get in trouble. Regardless of what you say to them, they pick up on certain mannerisms, they pick up on things, and they know, listen, I don't want to get in trouble. This is an adult. And so allowing them to know that if you communicate with someone, you're not going to get in trouble here on this end at your house, because sometimes that's the reason why people are silent and continue to be abused, because that abuser manipulates that child into thinking you're going to get in trouble. And so allowing our children to know that we have their back, that you're not going to get in trouble from your parents if something happens and you speak up and you say, hey, I don't like this. I think that's also important too, because again, they don't want to get in trouble.
Right. Right. So yeah, I think the important thing is sitting with your child and saying what type of boundaries we can create and helping them. And as they get older, they are very creative and they sort of have an idea, especially the older. Well, this makes me uncomfortable. So first letting them know it's okay to have a voice and to be able to say no to that person or to that situation. And then hopefully they're comfortable to tell you later what happened.
Right?
Yeah, to me, a lot of this sounds like kind of like what we were saying, talking about body safety from younger to older, and then providing your children and supporting them having a voice from when they're younger also carries on. That's something that will just, the more that they're able to have that autonomous voice, they can voice their own opinions as a child. It sounds like then they're able to converse with you like that as a teen also. Even, it makes me think of something as simple as, do you want an orange or an apple today? And okay, you're choosing, we're giving you space to have choice, to have a voice. Yeah, I mean, I think of something very simple with my daughter. I have one daughter who she likes gentle hugs. One daughter likes real cuddly, nice, cozy hugs. And so I will tell her, oh, you like gentle hugs. And so there are times, even with me, I will hug her tight and she'll say, did you forget? I like gentle hugs. I don't like tight hugs. Why did you give me a tight hug? She will tell me that. And so, but that's providing her with the voice, I'm like, you know what? I did forget. Thank you for reminding me. I will give you, and it sounds, cheesy and it's cute because they're little, but I think that that's a step in saying like, you have a voice with how even me as your mom comes in contact with your body.
Yes. And I think another thing too, along those same lines of giving them a voice, understanding that this is your body, like you said, and even as your parent, I do not even have the right to do things to you that you are uncomfortable with. Okay, my role, I may assist with cleaning, or there's some sort of an emergency or something, or for like a medical, even when they go to the doctor, I remember a time where, I made it clear the only reason why the doctor is examining you is because that is a part of this regular checkup, and I said that at the forefront so that they understand even a medical professional needs to ask your permission and needs to be granted that permission. It doesn't matter what someone's position is, whether they're a healthcare worker, whether they're clergy, they do not have the right to access your body whenever they want to. And so just those little things, even your parent, of course I'm in charge of you, but I'm not in charge of, I'm not allowed to do these, so that they understand how serious and important this is, that your body is truly your body, And so, and another thing that I wanted to say again, from the boy mom perspective, I think that it's also important for us to teach our children, whether they're a boy or a girl, but especially, you know, for boys, that you also need to respect other people's boundaries, because I think that's an important piece.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, overturning other people's desires, that's not a healthy pattern for them to have from the beginning. They need to learn foundationally that the same way that your body is to be respected, you need to be respecting other people's bodies as well. And I think the more as parents we sort of set that into practice, hopefully, you know, as they get older, they will be used to not only their boundaries, but also respecting, so that when they go to that sleepover and someone is uncomfortable and they want the door open, that they can respect that and say, okay, I understand this is something that that person isn't comfortable with. Because sometimes there's that peer pressure, you know, just like we said, sexual abuse can come from another child. And so hopefully if we can sort of raise our children in such a way that the boundaries that other people have are important too, when they begin to see someone get uncomfortable, they can realize that that's a problem. Maybe I need to go get an adult, or, you know, it can sort of be a trigger for them to say something deeper is happening.
Absolutely.
I do know. Oh, go ahead, Rhonda. Go ahead.
I just also want to encourage, because we have been very upfront about the whole foundational relationships that you have with your child. If you don't have that relationship right now, that does not mean that you don't try to reach out to your child and try to connect. We're not saying that it's too late. What I'm saying is it's just harder. It's going to take a lot more work. So if you have a child who's a little bit older, if you wanted to talk to them tonight about boundaries, go right ahead. We need to do so.
That's a really good point, Rhonda. Before we keep going, I just want to say if there's anyone attending and can type in the chat, or if you're on Facebook and want to comment, or Instagram and want to comment, if you can let us know just the age of your child or children, just so we can know kind of what audience we're dealing with as far as the specific ages, and we can try to respond or talk more in that direction. Did anyone want to add anything else about that before we transition to the next?
Yeah, I just want to also say that boundaries is not 100% proof. Bad things can still happen. It's not 100% proof, but it's something. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's good. I am going to share this video as we transition a little more, adding in the trafficking side of things. There is a video we wanted to share that Pam provided us before, and it's just a couple minutes. And so I'm just going to go ahead and play that now.
Today, if you saw somebody chained to a post, you would do something about it. But in the days of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a normal sight to see. It isn't as clear today of what modern slavery looks like. But by knowing the signs of human trafficking, you can help protect yourself and you can help protect others. Traffickers would often brand their victims with tattoos using words such as daddy or cash. Trafficking victims may show sudden changes of dress and behavior. They may suddenly have possessions that they usually can't afford. They may have unusually long work hours. Victims may have new relationships with boyfriends or girlfriends that are noticeably older. And I'm not talking about a few years. Difficulty with making eye contact, especially with men. Victims may have untreated medical problems, such as cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones. They may miss school frequently, like frequent trips. Victims may be unable to speak independently. Other people may insist on answering questions for them, or even translating them. Victims may even be frightened of authorities, seeing them as the bad guys. To request help or report possible human trafficking incidents, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-3737-888, or text info or help tag BeFree 233-733.
Okay. So this is, as we move into that topic, that just gave a huge snapshot into this topic. We're welcoming Tenisa. Hello, we introduced you. So thanks for joining us. And we're kind of, we just finished up that video as you saw. So we're moving into the next question, as just from a parent or caregiver perspective, is what are some of those signs that children, adolescents would exhibit if an abuser has violated them? And that's sexual abuse or trafficking. Go ahead.
And then real quick, I just wanted to say on Facebook, someone said that their child is 4.5.
Okay.
So just as a context for you guys, for different ages of people that are tuning into this.
Yes, and someone shared something too that I'm reading that's actually a really good insight to one of our attendees. They said, I would like to say, don't let other adults even or parents make you feel bad by calling you overprotective about how you protect your children. And I mean, we are trying to target, you know, in general, our culture as people of color, the Black community. And there is a tendency that, oh, well, you don't want to, you know, make your child soft, or you're letting them be too weak, or and you're like, and I agree with that. Do not let people make you feel bad or shame because you are trying to protect your child. That is so true. That is a really good point. So yeah, what are some signs that children or adolescents would exhibit if an abuser has violated them, sexual abuse or trafficking, but also even if they might be trying to approach them, you know, what are some signs that it may be happening or that it's leading that direction? And we can start with Pam and then just kind of go to Tenisa and Rhonda.
I would say some of the biggest signs would be changing their behavior. Like if you just behavior changes at school, and changing their friends. If you notice, they normally hang around this one person, but now they have this new friend they're always hanging around. So those are probably two the biggest. Oh, and then also if they have something they can't afford, but now they have it, like say they have the latest cell phone or latest outfit. So yeah, those are some of the major signs. And I just want to say that because trafficking, it can happen anywhere, but it's very big in the Black community, and just as various things we get overlooked. And so that's why it's really important for us to just know these signs and to really be looking for it, because it's not, a lot of people think like trafficking might happen overseas, but it's definitely in America, and it happens like an open site. So it happens at hotels or strip clubs or like hotels, like, so it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Pam was saying, like with some of the things that you would see, the changes in behavior, maybe being more provocatively dressed than they usually are. So this means that your kid was not dressing provocatively and now they are. Some tattoos, sometimes different sex trafficking rings have tattoos where they'll tattoo the girls here or on their neck somewhere. On different parts of their bodies, you might notice a tattoo, like a $sign tattoo or a diamond. I know that those are two prominent tattoos that sex trafficking rings happen to use. Also, Miami and Orlando are hubs for sex trafficking. So educating your kids teenagers, teenage girls, and boys specifically on the fact that we are in a hub and how to be conscious and how to protect themselves. I know that the FBI is doing a program where they will actually teach teenagers, they go to the schools, teach teenagers what the signs are, what to look for, not just for their own protection, but to be accountable, to be a protector for a friend, and who to report that information to. When it comes to what your listener was saying on Facebook is in regard to a 4-year-old, that's kind of, you have to really know your child and have used those opportunities to teach them what is a good touch, what is a bad touch, and the fact that it doesn't matter who is giving the touch, the person, that they need to speak to you about that and you allow them to have that space. And even if they misconstrued it, have that conversation. So that's what's most important at the age of 4, is finding those teachable moments, finding those opportunities where they mention something and you don't discredit them, but you're inquisitive about that experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also, because we always go back to the foundation of like you've got to know your child. Because I always feel like, I think about my 16-year-old daughter. She is the same as she was when she was a toddler. And so I know her so well. So even though she's grown up and she's matured, I can tell when there's something going on with her. And so I'm in tune to her. And so, and I think in terms of the younger kids, you will notice a shift in their behavior. That's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So, you know, for example, they've been going to Uncle John's house every week for the last 2 years. And then one week it's their turn to go and they're like, I don't want to go. And you have to, you can't dismiss it and go, child, please, keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, well, why? And maybe you may, and if you have that option, because sometimes there's not an option, as we mentioned before with, you know, you don't have choices sometimes as being a single parent, that, well, you have to go to Uncle John's house because he's the only one I have to take care of you today. So I'm not going to, you know, I want to keep that always to the side. But again, you know, talking to that child and trying to figure out, well, what's different, and validating their feelings and not being so quick to dismiss it because you think they're being, you know, difficult or bratty or something like that. So you also may notice them being clingy when they normally are not clingy, or they're uncomfortable with their physically. They're uncomfortable. They're squirming around a lot more, or, you know, that could be, of course, signs of more physical sexual abuse. If they're complaining about certain, you know, parts of their body. And so being able to have that open dialogue with your child, even at a young age, is just very important. So those are like little signs you may see in younger kids.
Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure that it would show up a little bit differently in younger children. I guess at the root of it, it's about being in tune and being connected, because I think as parents, sometimes you can just think, especially depending on how much you have going on in your own life, you can just really easily, like what you're saying kind of sounds like teenagers. And what you're saying just kind of sounds like a 4-year-old, you know, squirming, but really just being in tune and having that intuition that kicks in and says, but wait, this is just a little bit different, you know? And I know on Zoom, someone else commented misdirected anger. I guess, you know, where they're just lashing out on you, they're upset. And I can say, you know, personally, growing up, I was very close to a situation where something like this happened. And I can tell you that there was a change in behavior after the abuse began with this particular person. And I don't think that there were enough people that were maybe aware of that. I think it did kind of get thrown in the bucket of, teenager. You know, so again, just like we pulled out earlier, at the end of the day, your communication with your child, it just seems like that keeps coming up. Your relationship with your child, your communication with your child is going to be the foundation of protecting your child from sexual abuse and human trafficking. That's what it sounds like we're getting to here.
Yes, it is. It's the core of our message. It's to be the best parent that you can be. And then I know generation-wise, some of us have not had good parents. So we learn, and their parents weren't all that great. So it's hard. It's not easy being a parent.
I just want to say communication with your kids is the key, because I would advise parents to check your kids' Instagram and Facebook accounts, because people very easily prey on kids that way. They'll just pretend like there's someone online and be like they want to meet up, and that's what happens. So it's very important to be looking at who they're communicating with and who they're talking to.
And you know, I can imagine that this would be shocking too. I feel like, you know, it's always the case where you never think it's going to be you. And I think that's probably why a lot of these cases get overlooked as well, because I just, you know, I can imagine a parent who's 13 or 14-year-old is on Instagram, and you're just assuming that if something were to happen, your child would tell you. And how many of those shows have we seen on ABC, NBC, where they put children, it's like a what would you do type of scenario, and they put the child in a compromised situation, and the parents are watching behind the scenes, and they see their children go into a van because the person says, oh, we have video games, if you guys want to check them out, or whatever the case is, and they're watching in horror while their child does something that they've been telling them for years not to do. So I think a lot of parents are just like, oh, not my baby. Like, they know that if somebody comes at them the wrong way on Instagram, they let me know. But like, I even remember actually a situation where when I was 9 years old, I have a sister that's 7 years older than me, and she was not home. And so one of her friends called, who was 16 years old. And so I'm 9, I answered the phone. And I said, you know, she's not available at the moment, you know, whatever. I'm 9, so I was like, she's not home. So and so he started to talk to me. He started to ask me what school I went to. I let him know, because again, I'm thinking this is a comfort situation. And he started to try and convince me that I needed to leave school one day and come and see him, get on the bus. He's like, this is the bus that rides by your school. It's really easy. Just take $2 with you. And we were just having this conversation. And even though something in me as a 9-year-old knew that it was wrong, I guess I just figured, since this is one of my sister's friends, like, I don't know what I thought. And I just was on the phone, and I knew I wasn't going to go see him. But still, that was at least a seed. And so who would have known if he kept calling the house and I never said anything to anyone, if this could have continued. Now, my older brother got home and I told him about it. And let's just say it was star 69 calling the number back, and some words were exchanged. But I could have kept that to myself though, right? I could have just not said anything because I was afraid I would get in trouble, even though I did nothing wrong. And so I think a lot of parents are probably in a situation where they're probably surprised, where they're probably caught off guard. They just don't think that this is gonna happen or that it is happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's been situations where teenagers are reached out to via Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger. And it's like, oh, I got your number, or I got your IG from your friend Suzanne, right? And Suzanne and I were talking about meeting at the park. Do you want to come? We're going to go over here and we're going to smoke. We're just going to smoke. You don't have to smoke if you don't want to, but Suzanne is coming, you know, and the next thing you know, your kid shows up and there's no Suzanne, and it's her and this man, you know, or things like that. So we just have to be conscious that we're communicating with our kids about asking specifying questions, you know, find out if the person is a catfisher. You know, this is how you find out. I mean, for me personally, as an adult, I can look at a page and say, you posted 12 pictures today. This is definitely a catfish, right? But for a teenager to see that, what I actually did the last time I got catfished is I actually pulled out my phone and I brought my daughter with me to watch how I responded to the catfish. And then to watch his response to me acknowledging that.
What is a catfisher? Can you define that? What is that?
So I have an Instagram page, and a guy reached out to me via Instagram Messenger and was like, "Hey, gorgeous, how you doing? I saw your Instagram, want to chat." And when I saw that, I immediately went to his page, because you can click the profile and see the person's profile. And he had 4 pictures that he posted within the last hour. So I knew it was a catfish. And I said to my daughter, I said, come, I said, "What do you think about this message?"
I love that question.
Was, "Oh, it's a guy trying to hit on you. He
Mm.
looks kind of cute," is what she said. I said, "Okay, well, let's read the message." We read the message. I said, "Now let's click on the profile." She said, "Yeah, he must be new to Instagram." I said, "But look at the time that the photos are posted.
Mm-hmm.
They're all within the last hour. What should we say back to him?"
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Are you catfishing me because you posted your last 4 pictures in the last hour and you're new to Instagram? I don't think so. Is this a real photo of you?" I was like, "Bam, let's do it. Send."
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing we know, this user was no longer on Instagram, you see. So it's just like, to me, it's always about finding those teachable moments and using them in real time. I cannot purchase that moment, right? That moment presented itself. And I said, it would be wise for me to show my daughter that every time that I'm saying that people get catfished and that you've probably been catfished, let's walk through the process together so that we can both see how it plays out when we tell people that we caught them. You know,
Yeah.
just an example.
No, I think that's great. It even makes me think of if a news story comes up on this topic, being able to, hey, if your child is sitting there on the couch or they're in the other room, "Hey, come here. I just saw this story. What do you think about this? If this were you, or if this were one of your friends, how would you respond? Or how wouldn't you respond?" So it just makes me think back to the communication piece and even the voice piece we've been talking about asking them, not just assuming, kind of like what Charlene was saying, "Oh, my child wouldn't do that. I just know they wouldn't do." Go ahead and present the scenario. If it comes up, like you said, Tenisa, it may not. And then let them exercise, let them hear their response. Because we might as a parent be surprised and say, "Oh, baby, sweetie, this is what you really should do, or think about doing this instead."
I just want to say one more thing. In that same way that as Black mothers or fathers, let's just imagine we're at the grocery store and somebody else's kid is falling out. The thing we immediately do is look at our kid and say, "You bet not, never," right?
Ever.
I wish you would. I would tear you up if you ever, right? So imagine that same teachable moment turned around into when you see somebody being mistreated. Maybe we don't pay so much attention, but you've seen men grab women in public. In moments like that, that's a teachable moment presenting itself. The same way you said, "You bet not ever," about that kid acting up in the store. You say, "Oh my goodness, do you see that? What you think about that?" What would you do if you were in a relationship and he was treating you like that? Right? So now that's just a teachable moment. It presented itself the same way that moment presented itself. Or if you ever act up like that in this store, it's like, if you ever date a man like that, right? Or a woman like that, so they present themselves and you just have to be available to use them.
And that's a good point when you're teaching kids, there's about self-confidence and self-esteem, and how they feel about themselves is really going to determine what they're going to expect from other people and how they're going to allow other people to treat them. So you tell them from an early age that you are beautiful, you are special, you are deserving of being treated well. No one has the right to degrade you, to hit you. And because there's a lot of people that I've worked with such low self-esteem, this is what they felt like they deserved. And that's
Yeah.
how we felt for many years. They
Right.
never really created a really good self-awareness of themselves. And so that's tied into it as well, making sure that our children feel they are worthy of something good.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, so in the interest of time, let's continue on in the discussion. So can we start to talk about, in you guys' experience, especially all of you have professional experience, and I know, again, Pam, you're right there sort of on the front lines. What are we looking at in terms of the perpetrators of these crimes? Okay, so the people who are acting out abuse on Black children, whether it be in a family context or in a human trafficking context, what are some characteristics of abusers? What do they look like? What do they talk like? What do they do? How do they get their victims? Like, what are some things that parents can be aware of?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll start more focused on how they get them, because abusers can really, it can be anybody. Like, it is not like the one person like view we might have of what an abuser is. Yeah, it could totally be anybody who works a regular job, but that's what he does like on the side. So it could definitely be anybody, but I'll talk more on the grooming side, because what Rhonda said was really important about affirming your child when they're younger, because that's how they start with the grooming process. They'll provide affirmation and then give gifts and compliments, and they really buy into that, and that's where they see their self-worth. And and so it really starts from there, because and the people who are like the men who are traffickers, and also I want to say it's not just one person, it's usually like a series of people, because it can really start from a same-sex relationship. Like, it could be I've heard stories of, it's a girl like that she met at school, and then it's like, oh, hey, you want to hang out? And then they go hang out, and she's like buying her expensive things, and they're just having a great time. And then she's like, oh, well, my friend's gonna come over, and then we're just gonna hang out. And then like the abuse starts there, because she's like, well, you need to pay me for those clothes that you have on, or remember when I bought you that? So then they're like trapped in that situation. And so situations can start off like that because they see you as an investment. And so that's why they started grooming, because they see you as an investment, that the money would be worthwhile in the future. So I just spoke to the grooming part. I know, Tanisha, you want to speak more on like the types of traffickers?
I was gonna say that when it comes to how they get them, I like what Pam was saying, and then how you kind of get roped in once you feel like you have an obligation to them. Now you feel like I can't tell anybody because I'm ashamed of myself for getting stuck in this position where I now owe this person $1,000, and now am I supposed to tell my parents that I owe them $1,000? You know, so then you're stuck in that place where you're trying to fix it as an adult might fix a large problem, but you don't, as a teenager, really have that skill set to fix the situation as an adult, but you feel embarrassed that you got yourself in that position, and you feel the obligation of owing them. And so just as they might say, my friend's gonna come over, and they might say, well, we're just gonna give him a massage and he's gonna give us $50. You know, and next thing you know, the man's pants are off, and he's like, yeah, it's okay, you can just massage around my thighs. You know, you don't have to touch anything, but I'll pay you an extra $50 if you massage right in this area, like my groin area is really hurting, right? And so it's kind of like roping you deeper and deeper in before things get worse. And then the next thing you know, that female friend that invited you is saying, oh, go over to Johnny's house without me. I'm not going to be able to make it today, but you know what to do. Right. And so you're already in, and you're already roped in. And so these groups that have, they've actually recruited young female teenagers, young male teenagers who are going out and getting the kids from the middle schools and bringing them to the pimps. And so like Pam was saying, they see them as an investment. and the person, the teenage male or female who brings in the people is getting a cut of what the profit is from the sex traffic trade. When it comes to like younger kids and family members, I would say if any of you are out here listening and you've been molested or sexually assaulted or raped, there is an intuition that comes with that experience. Whenever you get around someone and you feel like, oh, this person feels grimy, acknowledge the feeling within yourself and don't trust them. Because guess what? I'd rather not trust you with my kids because I feel you're grimy than trust you with my kids and ignore the sensations that my body is telling me and something bad happened. So there is from that unfortunate event, your body actually develops a sensation that tells you someone like this is around, right? But we've stopped trusting ourselves.
Right,
and
because you've never gotten the help to process it. You've never gotten the counseling. You may not even be at a place where you feel like you're valuable and what you're seeing is what you're actually seeing. Yeah. And that's a part of sort of like the breakdown in our community where people are victims and are going on years and decades without this stuff being treated and helped. And so their discernment is off, their meters are off, and all of those things. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's true. That happens as well, and that's why it's twofold. I would rather have my discernment be off and my kids be safe than ignore my discernment because it's skewed and put my kids in danger.
Yeah.
And so if my discernment is off and I'm saying to myself, I think everybody's a pedophile, right? Then that's when I need to acknowledge within myself that there is something that is consistently being triggered for me and that I need to pursue some sort of assistance, whether that be a support group or a hotline or a therapist. I recommend a therapist, but being a therapist, of course, I would recommend that. However, I understand if people aren't in positions and desire to pursue that. But therapy is becoming more and more of a way forward for Black people. We got to get well. We just got to get well.
I agree. Rhonda, what were your thoughts?
So I was thinking as far as what Pam had mentioned about the whole grooming is that they do target, they kind of target what we consider the vulnerable and the weak, someone who doesn't have maybe a strong family to go home to. And so they are more likely to befriend them, and then they become important to them and they become like their second family. So for example, I had a client who 15 had a horrible relationship with her family, always fighting, always running away. So another girlfriend of hers said, well, hey, why don't you just come, live with us? So she just kind of like, her parents didn't care. It was unfortunate. Her parents didn't even care. Went to live with this girl. It was the girl's mother and boyfriend that kind of got her into this. At the time, you wouldn't call it trafficking. There were other, names for it, but it was essentially trafficking. And it was sad because the friend's daughter, she was only just doing what she was been doing for a couple of years. Sort of like, you get someone else to come in. And so my client was in this position for like 2 years.
Wow.
So they would have friends come over and they were like, well, can you do this to Tommy? And can you do this? And it was a male and a female. So many faces. Traffickers have many faces.
Yeah. I remember you saying in previous conversations we had, Rhonda, that it's not going to be some ugly, monstrous person. We just need to blow that myth up completely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then how do we move from, okay, so we understand now, it's like we're blowing that myth up. So we do see the signs. Our child is acting different. They're acting out. They got the misdirected anger. They're uncomfortable going certain places. Their clothes have changed. We see those things. What do we do next? So, and we are at 2:42 here, guys. So we have a couple more questions to go, but what do we do next? What is the next step for a parent or a caregiver? They've seen the signs, everything is adding up. What's their next step?
I would say if it's a teenager, they could also out to a CSEC coordinator, which is basically a person who would come out and ask questions to your teenager. There is no consequence to you as the parent. This is actually just like an inquiry, like if you were to take your kid to the doctors because you're like, I don't know what's going on, can you help me? You know, so there is no, it doesn't like come back on you. It's not like self-reporting child abuse or anything like that. But someone comes out and actually questions your son or daughter, and there is a way to determine based on that questionnaire if your child is actually involved in sex trafficking, whether they are in what end and what they're getting from that. And then they have programs. I know like Devereaux has a program, and you can just call, someone will come out. If your kid wants to go to them, or if you feel more comfortable not having them come to your house, they have undisclosed locations that they'll send you to, and the kid can be interviewed there. So I would rather not like respond in anger, but more ask the questions. And if I still feel uncomfortable with the responses that I'm getting, contact CSEC and have them questioned formally by a professional who can help them through the process, either by putting them in like a recovery program, or putting them with a therapist that works specifically with kids that are have histories of sex trafficking, or getting them whatever mental, emotional help, and to separate them from their trafficker.
Okay, and we put that as number 2, just for those who are listening and have the resource guide, or if you want to download it later from ChatwithCharli.com. We put that as number 2 on the resource guide, CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation of children. So there is some phone numbers and links to their site. And then just for local people here in Orlando, there's a link to the Devereaux site of CSEC there at number 2, just so you guys know that that's there.
I think it's important.
Go ahead, Rhonda.
I think it's important for you to make sure that you are articulating to your child that it is not their fault, that they have been a victim of someone else's cruelty and nastiness, and just making sure it stops right then and there. You do whatever you need to do to make sure that these patterns are just, they're disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
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 Because in the end, the child's security level is going to be already shaky as it is, because like, oh my goodness, I just told my parents or whoever, the important caretaker that's in their life at the time, all this information. So of course, in their eyes, they're like, am I going to get in trouble? What's going to happen to my parents? I mean, I have heard many of times from these people, they tell them, it's like, well, if you say anything, you know, you're going to get taken away and you're going to go into the foster system. And so they threaten children or people that, or the younger adults, you know, who don't have anyone. This is going to happen. You're not going to have anything. And so they believe that. And so you have to like counter all that stuff that they've been given and say, no, I've got you.
Yes.
So no matter what may be going on inside your brain at the time, because you may be like, you know, ready to just go crazy, but it's like, no, this is not what my child needs from me right now.
Right, right.
They need to feel validated about their experience.
Right.
And you have to let them know that they did nothing wrong.
So this is not the time for you as a parent to express all of your feelings and your emotions. This is time to, I'm here to support my child. I'm here to support this child that is sharing this with me. I'm here to support, validate. That is good. And I remember Charlene saying at the conference we went to that was a big standout point for just as parents to remember that this is not the time to express our own.
Right.
Because it's not about us. It's not about our egos. It's about our children's experience and what they just went through.
Yes.
So take the focus off of us and focus on what we need to do for our
Then
child.
go cry in the bathroom later. Then go cry in the bathroom later.
Yeah.
You know,
Call your therapist.
Exactly.
You know, let that moment be theirs. It is not your moment to wow out even. You know, they may be embarrassed. And so you even saying something in that moment could be too much. Ask them what they need and just be that. And no matter what rises up in you that you want to be, choose to repress that feeling so that your kid can feel that you are for them and with them, and that what they need is more important than what you want. Yeah. And in circumstances like that, we're talking about people who maybe they're reporting someone and is auntie or uncle, and I'm staying at their house while you go to work. It's kind of like we have to consider that, well, is my job more important than my kid's safety? Okay, maybe it is not. And maybe we need to figure something else out for the kid for the time being. Is there an after school program grant that we can put them into? Can we reach out and find out if 4C is available for coverage, for cost coverage? You know, is there an emergency option that I can reach in and grab out of my pocket? And then that means sometimes we have to be vulnerable with our neighbors when we reach out emergency assistance. And this is where community comes into play, because I need you to take my baby. She just told me that uncle, auntie so-and-so is touching her. I gotta go to work, girl. You know I gotta go to work. Come on now, I need you.
Right.
And vulnerability piece for community is so invaluable here. It's an opportunity for us to tell the truth out loud to each other and really find true and honest connection.
Right.
It's a 911 situation.
Right.
Where you have to
definitely
just not let yourself be vulnerable. Let people support you.
And I think
Pam, did you have any?
Oh yeah.
I was just going to agree with everyone was saying, because support is the biggest thing. So in a trafficking situation, just being able to support your child, because you're fighting against, because they probably have told them that they'll threaten them with killing their parents or coming to their family. So you're fighting against that as well. And it's kind of like they pretty much do a brainwashing. So you're fighting against that. So they just need to know that you will come get them, even if you call them at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to come and get them. And it's kind of a side note, but a lot of times with trafficking addiction is that happens too, because sometimes addiction gets them there, because we're an addict, you're just in your addict mind, or you're just really trying to feed your addiction, so you aren't like in your best mind. So rehab is a great place as well, so that if they're willing to go to rehab, because the hardest thing I know with parents is these kids, they aren't going to want to leave until they see it. So it takes a while for them to see it, but the quicker you know and more support you give them, it's like that's the best thing for them right now.
Okay, that is good. We have about 10 more minutes and a couple more questions. So we want to touch on forgiveness culture in the Black community. We know that is a thing, and with families and church, And then, and before we start taking questions, talking about some specific ways that we can support children and young adults in being less susceptible. But let's start with forgiveness culture in the Black community. It has to stop. It has to stop. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you guys' thoughts?
I would say, like, I am of a mind that I'm going to be authentic to what I need in my life. And that starts with me acknowledging what has to go, what I can no longer take. And so I'll no longer say that being Christian means forgiving every foolish thing that somebody does to me, because it does not mean that. Okay. And I can make peace with what you've done and still keep you out of my life, because I refuse to be bitten by the snake again. You know, so I've made peace with some choices that people have made that have negatively affected my life. And I have also decided that if they go into the barbecue, I'm not coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to apologize for that being my truth, because I refuse to play nice with someone who has victimized me. I just won't do it. And we have got to just break out of the mindset that in order for us to be a community, we have to accept whatever happens within the community. I'm saying, say out loud, watch your son around Uncle Tommy, because, you know, we had a problem last year. I'm just going to say the thing. And if people want to be mad, then guess what? I'm going to live in my authenticity, knowing that I could have potentially prevented him from doing something to somebody else's kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I also, what message are we sending to the child as well? So for example, if we're going back to the close friend of the family or a family member, okay, they did something to my child. A year later, we're at we're having a family reunion, and here we are eating chicken together. And so the child sees that. What is that going to say to the child? That, oh, I guess it doesn't really matter anymore what happened to me. And that's going to make the child feel that security that has taken so long to kind of build up just kind of washes away. And so for me, again, it's going back to those boundaries. I don't know if I'm going to forgive you, but I'm not going to have you, and I don't want to be in your presence anymore, because you did something very damaging to my child, if it happened to my child, or even damaging to me, whatever the case is. So I'm going to choose not to be in your presence. So and I'm teaching my child that you matter to me, and these some of these little family functions don't matter. And I'm not going to pretend and laugh and smile around other people knowing that this happened to my child. So I think we need to be very consistent with who's a good person to have in our lives. And it's okay not to be forgiving.
It's okay to not be forgiven.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I would agree, because it's very important that we teach the child their values. So like what Rhonda said, if we're saying, oh, you can still come to the family picnic and stuff like that, because the child just really needs to know their value and just knows what happened to them mattered. And so I'm just going to go on a limb. I feel like because we face so much trauma, and family can just be a really big thing, like not to be with family is so huge. But if that person is hurting you, even as a family member, that's not a healthy relationship. So you can't continue in that relationship. So it's important for our kids to know that.
Right.
And that is hard, especially within our community, because kind of like one of our attendees was saying, you may even have other family members who say to you, why don't you come around when he's here? Or why aren't you coming to this? You don't ever show up at this stuff anymore. And I mean, I really think that's up to each person, how much they want to share, or if they want to tell why or explain. But you also can't feel free not to let another family member shame you or make you feel upset or guilty because of your choices for your child or yourself.
But then
that does happen.
Protecting the victimizer. You know, we have this community mindset where everything that happens in the community stays in the community. Just like we all know what happens in my house stays in my house. And guess what? The things that stay in mama's house are usually secrets, not business. Right. Okay. It's not a secret when you a straight A honor roll student, but it's not family business. Sure.
Right.
But if my boyfriend is touching me, then that's family business and it stays in my house. So we have to get away from protecting people who are victimized and say, you know why I'm not at the family cookout this year? Did you know, did auntie tell you that so-and-so? But because it becomes so normalized that we just all say that's family business and that's between him and her and ain't none of my business. But it is your business because we should all be saying, hey, so-and-so, do you need to go get help for this? We've heard that you touched several of the young little nieces in our family. Should we be looking at getting you some help?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Please know, I'm just saying, if someone has been abused, I do think that they should have the right, if their own story is shared and to what extent. But that doesn't mean that you can't say that this has happened. But I do think that the person who's been abused should have some sort of say in their own private information.
Right. And also,
just that it shouldn't come like is all I'm saying. If you want to control your narrative for your life and your wellness, that is absolutely perfect, fine, and makes sense. But I would challenge us to reconsider whether or not I'm changing the story from my narrative to help me be well, or if I'm changing the story because I'm embarrassed about what I let someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's a process, right? Mm-hmm. I agree.
Right. And also too, not shaming, especially if it's a teenager. And I know people personally that at a very young, tender age were shamed for coming forward about someone, and that person ended up having legal consequences taken against them, and that child was made to feel as though they had done wrong. And so I think as adults, we have to check ourselves and even check the people around us when they have these attitudes of, girl, I done found out that she's over here at this house doing sexual favors for this man, and she knows she's supposed to be in school. Well, she's a victim or she's a survivor, of a situation. We have to be sure that, because our culture can be kind of critical of people, especially if you're a teenager. And like I just said, even for children, sometimes we get warped in our perspective that we're not making these children feel. I've even seen viral videos of a girl coming to her mom saying, your boyfriend touched me, and the mom just straight popping off on her daughter as if her daughter did something wrong. So we really have to check ourselves, check our friends, check family members when they come with these crazy perspectives of trying to make their children out to seem like they were wrong because they outed somebody for some inappropriate behavior.
Yes.
And I just want to say, it could be another topic, but it's also a generational thing, because if it happened to them, it's like, well, it happened to me. So you just do it until someone breaks that cycle. It just continues, because it is, I just say from personal experience, it's hard to go and report that person to authorities, but that has to happen, because it's not like, you just forgive it and keep going on. So it could be very hard, but we just have to get to a place where we realize that it has to stop, like the cycle has to stop.
And to parents, when you hear your kid, your teenage daughter or son report to you, if you've personally been molested or sexually assaulted or raped or a victim of such horrible crimes, then you have to remember and remind yourself what you felt like when that happened to you. And imagine that you didn't have the courage, but they do in this moment. So just imagine how much strength and courage they had to use to come forward with this. And, you know, even if you like, no, that didn't happen to you, which is like the worst thing we can say. Because one thing is, I might just place it on to someone I feel safer with giving the pain to, right? The actual person who did the thing to me is scary, terrifying. So I'm not going to blame this person. I'm not going to name this person, but this person is kinder and softer, and I'll put it on them. But the thing is that you never want to just say, no, they would never do that. But pursue it, investigate it, be inquisitive and gather information and do the things that are right for the kid, because maybe later you'll find out that it was this other person that's scary and terrifying. And that's still in the best interest of the kid. They need to be believed.
No, that's so great. That's really good, Denise. That's really good. I feel like we kind of covered our kind of last question just throughout our discussions. The only thing that I feel like we missed is the idea of even providing kids or adolescents with the one-liners that they could give to people. Tenisa, I remember you bringing that up, the whole idea of, well, I gotta ask my mom. To one-liners to adults. And so that's something to just remember as we kind of transition into the Q&A part. Do we have, I know we had a couple of questions that came in throughout. One question is, and I think she missed the very beginning, but maybe Tenisa can add to this. Do you have any statistics? That question came in again on how often it's happening in our community. And we kind of touched on the idea that the statistics are few and far between or dated. But Tenisa, did you have anything to add to that question?
I mean, as far as the statistics go, they are far out skewing. I would say more than likely, I'm looking at the statistics of clients that come into my office. I'm seeing a lot of women, probably 5 in 7 women are coming in the office reporting some type of sexual molestation or history of it where they never reported it. Maybe they never even spoke to their parents about it, so their parents don't actually know, and that it's a family member that they're forced to hug when they see them. So it's Uncle so-and-so, and when we have family gatherings, I have to hug him, because if I don't hug him, then there's a conflict. So we have to really wrap our minds around the idea that if we are in spaces where we have a hug culture or kiss culture or a sit on their lap culture, which I cannot stand. Oh, you're bouncing them on your knee. No. Okay, that's unacceptable, because girls shouldn't be sitting on grown men's laps. I just don't think so. But anyway, so yeah, that statistical piece is more like in the African-American community, it is so prominent that we have young ladies who are being, getting bad touches, whatever level that may be, from family members, and they're forced to be around them because our family systems tend to be really enmeshed, which means enclosed, all the business, everybody knows everybody's business, everybody got an opinion about somebody's life, and look at so-and-so and let's talk about that person and see what they doing and all of those things. So it's difficult when the system is so intertwined to actually speak out. So that would be my personal statistic from what I witness in office here.
Right, because when you talk about statistics, you have to question, well, who's doing the research? How long has the research has been done? What is the purpose of that research? And when you have that information, what do you plan on doing with that information? So for me, it's like, well, I tend to be very picky about people's statistics because I don't know truly where does it come from. And are you focusing on Black, people, and do you care about what's going on in the community? Or are you just creating these numbers just to have numbers? So I feel the same way. I think about all of my clients, African American or color, women of color, because that to me includes Dominicans, it would include Haitians, it would include more West Indies. So what has been their background? And it's unfortunate to say that there has been more of that abuse than not. I have kind of come up with my own, and I'm telling you now, it's more than not. And it's and a lot of people aren't saying anything. A lot of people aren't telling. They're telling their therapist for the first time. I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it from my clients. I didn't tell my parents. I'll say something when my parents are dead because I don't want them to feel bad or something like that. So you can't. Statistics isn't really going to tell you really what's actually going on out there. It's helpful sometimes, but you can't always rely on it.
Someone just said, and I'm sorry, Pam, did you want to say anything about the statistics piece?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay. So someone just said, so true, be mindful of younger siblings. When my godfather tried with me and my personality didn't permit it, he went on to my younger sister and I never knew or thought about it until many years later and I felt guilty. And I can say that I have heard a lot of people talk about my sibling and I were both a victim of the same person, and either we never knew it or I was trying to protect them. So now you have that compounding where you were a victim and then you feel bad because the younger sibling or whatever. Whew.
Yeah, and that sounds like, honestly, sounds like having some survivor's guilt there. I survived the situation and I left it for someone else to be trapped into. And so me surviving ended up causing them harm. But the question would be, how would you rectify that? By being molested? That's the large question, right? So it's kind of like, yes, watch out for your younger siblings. That's absolutely a thing. But the question is less about, well, I should have been molested, so she wasn't molested, when we don't even know if that would actually be true. But more about, how do I forgive myself for making a choice to rescue myself?
That's good.
Yes, because the reality is that abuser was an abuser. That's what that person was going to be. Yes.
And the abuser recognizes the victim, they see them. And so when he saw you, he said, she's probably a victim. And then you said, no, I'm not. And he said, oh, okay, she's not a victim. Right? Oh, my bad, my mistake. Right? And so that's kind of how, what does that say, Charlie?
So she actually said no, but if I had said what he tried, so she's saying, or he, I'm not sure, that if I would have shared it with an adult specifically, maybe he may not have, she may have not, okay. She's saying that maybe he may not have gotten a chance. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so once again, that is a survivor's guilt kind of thought. As a child, you were thinking, oh, I'm safe, right? And so this is the same thing that we see with combat soldiers when we say, here's a gold star for surviving. They're like, yeah, but my battle buddy didn't. So I'm not actually a hero, right? So it's that same mentality where we have to allow ourselves to be free from the guilt of what we didn't know and what we couldn't prevent.
Yeah, compassion. You did the best that you could do for whatever age and context you were in. So it's just like giving yourself that compassion of, you did the best you could do.
Right.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be your burden. It's not your burden to carry. And you are still actually a victim.
Yeah.
it didn't happen to you, you still got victimized.
She said, I was a teen.
Exactly. I see you saying I didn't know
written,
what I know now.
but I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, like I said, once again, I'm going to say I'm a proponent for therapy, but I think that this is a perfect circumstance where you would go and get some therapeutic counseling so that you can release that burden, give yourself the grace you deserve, and reconcile that with yourself. Even you can bring your sister in to one of your sessions and have that open conversation about, I wish I had, I should have, could have, would have, and flush it out of your system so that you both can be well and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a traumatic experience either way. So that's just a different kind of trauma.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, this was a very informative, necessary, real, authentic, and so many other things discussion. And I just think that so much more needs to be said on this topic. And so we definitely want to do this again. We're getting to the closing piece of our first track where we discuss protecting Black children from sexual abuse. And we just want to say a special thank you to each of our panelists for leveraging your expertise and really just digging into, you know, yourselves to just pull out examples and just give us heartfelt information that we can use moving forward. Again, we want to say for people who did register via www.chatwithcharli.com, you will get a resource guide that we have put together. We have already asked all of our panelists to provide us with resources, websites, links, agencies, videos, book recommendations that you guys can have moving forward. And so you do want to go to that link on the website and put in your email, because we'll follow this up with anyone new that registered with that resource guide. And so again, just a special thanks. We're already getting comments. This was great. And thank you, and we appreciate it. All well said. So are there any last remarks as we close out and take a quick 10-minute break before we start the next session on processing terrorism as a family?
I just want to second the thank you to everyone, and also just second the use of the resource guide. There really are local, national resources, some articles about stereotypes for Black boys, girls, men, women, and also just the books, even something as simple as we have like a book on here, Celebrate Your Body, and its changes too, Ultimate Puberty Book for Girls, Changing You, A Guide to Body Changes and Sexuality. It's for elementary children. Amazing You, Getting Smart About Your Private Parts. Just little things that you can literally just order through Amazon and get it at your house in 2 days. And also something that's coming to mind, so I'm just gonna share it. I also want to second what Rhonda said a little bit ago about if the relationship isn't there, that it's still time to today or tonight, you know, sit down and have that conversation. I love the beauty that is the redemptive, hopeful aspect of that just really is coming up in me. So I just wanted to remind you all of what she said, because I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is it.
Wow.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you.
Also, too, guys, don't forget to check out everyone here. Everyone here has a way that you can reach out to them. You know, again, Tenisa has a practice. You know, April has an Instagram account. Rhonda, you also have a link that you put in, and Pam, you have an Instagram account. All those things will be in the resource guide so that you can follow up with our panelists. You know.
Yeah, Rhonda and Tenisa are active therapists right now. So though, if you're looking for therapy, those are people to definitely reach out to. Yeah, you guys are taking clients?
I am, yes.
Okay.
in African-American women's concerns and issues. So yes, and trauma, yes. Taking one.
Great, great.
All right.
All right, well, thanks again. I would like to. So welcome, everyone. This is track 2 of our Black Family Forum, and this track is all about processing race as a family. And I will start by just introducing myself. I am April. I'm a licensed mental health therapist. I have worked in the counseling world for about 10 years now in private practice settings. I've worked in hospitals. I've worked in the school setting also. And I've mainly worked with adults and families. I do work with adolescents as well, but in private practice, that's my preference. I've worked with anxiety, depression, transition of life. You're talking about relationship issues, career support needs, racial trauma, infertility, cultural identity, and more. My passion, though, specifically is for supporting women of color, like myself. Most recently, I've been at home with my daughters who are 2 and 4, but I do look forward to kind of rejoining the Orlando mental health community this year. So I'm looking forward to that. Charlene, tell us a little bit about yourself. Co-host.
Yes. Hey, yes. So April and I are co-hosting this event. Our real passion and desire a couple years ago, April and her husband invited my husband and I to an event that was similar, talking about protecting children from sexual abuse. And one of the things that we noticed was that it was not geared towards Black families. So we wanted to do something, come together and just put together a resource that was targeted towards Black families, talking about the issues that we're facing. And so just to let you know a little bit about myself, my name is Charlene. My nickname is Charlie. I run the platform ChatwithCharli, where I just leverage all of the life lessons and experiences that I've had in the 10 years of my marriage to Jay, who is on the panel, and just kind of help people to navigate some of the things that as Black millennials we face in marriages, relationships, parenthood, and that thing. So that's my primary gig. I assist my husband with his business, his clothing line, and I also have an administrative support business that I run on the side. We have 2 sons, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So we are parents of 2 boys. And so all of the issues that we have talked about during this family forum directly impact us. So it's always just my heart.
I'm gonna go tend to one of them right now. 1 second, y'all.
Right, because I hear
I was just gonna ask you where your boys at.
It's definitely real around here. So yeah, so just my heart's desire is the Black community, just because I see the gaps. I've seen the gaps in my life growing up. I've seen the gaps in my life with marriage and things, and just the lack of resources. So just really excited about this, and just happy to all of our panelists as well that they joined us. So
Yes, I will go ahead and jump into introducing our panelists. We have, and if you could just raise your hand so we know, although I think the names are at the bottom, but we have Tenisa Montgomery. Hi. She is the founder of Mother Nurture's Counseling Solutions, currently holding a master's degree of science and education in the field of clinical mental health counseling from, help me with your school.
Duquesne University.
Duquesne University. In Pittsburgh.
I murdered
Mother Nurture's Counseling Solution is her counseling practice. Mother Nurture's Counseling Solutions is actually located right here in Maitland, Florida, and she specializes in transition of life phases. She also provides counseling, consulting, and mental health assessments for really a variety of purposes. Testing anxiety, medical procedures, self-improvement, court order evaluation. You can find her in many places: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Mother Nurture Counseling, LLC. And we have all of the links for the panelists in the resource guide. that if you didn't get it already emailed to you, you can go to, after this, you can go to chatwithcharli.com and download the resource guide. Also, next up, we have Chermica Barnes, educator and wellness advocate. Chermica is a proud mother of 3 amazing kids. She has a BA in psychology from the University of Buffalo. So y'all are both up there in the cold.
Yes.
As well as 2 master's degrees, one in reading literacy and the other in curriculum and instruction. She's been an educator for 10 years, currently a first grade teacher, team lead, and wellness ambassador at her school. Teaching kids about culture and history is one of the greatest highlights of her career. She believes that the world is full of knowledge and learning is for a lifetime. Her most recent endeavors include a wellness initiative designed to foster self-care, self-love, healthier families, and the well-being of educators in our community. She loves spending time with her family, reading, traveling, cooking, meal prepping, and enjoying life to the fullest. You can find her on Instagram at amikajohn3. So that also you can find on our resource guide. Our third panelist is Jay Gilmore. He is a CEO and community leader. Hello, hello. He is a man of many talents. However, his proudest accomplishment is being a family man. He is married to his wife, Charlene, who is my co-host of 10 years. And they have 2 intelligent, fun sons. I was gonna add handsome, but that's outside of spending time.
Energetic.
I just had to attend to one of them. He spilled a smoothie all over himself. The first time he done it, and it happened to happen while we live. It's good. It's dope, right? Ain't that?
That's life.
That's life.
That's life right there. That's all caps. Outside of spending time with his family, Jay is the owner and operator of unmadetees.com, a unique apparel boutique which specializes in merging traditional African art with modern clothing. Jay also spent 12 years, yes, and I have unmade tee gear too, so I will say yes.
Wait, I don't have any. I don't have any.
I have purchased some, I would say I have purchased some unmade tee. That Mind Over Matter shirt, actually. It's like a maroon color. I love it.
Yeah, I love that shirt.
Oh, you say green.
Yes. So Jay has also spent 12 years in public education as a teacher and IT technician. Jay is active in his local community and committed to bettering the lives of Black children and families. So as you can see, there's a theme here with the panelists caring about Black children and families, people, Absolutely. Family. That's a theme, and that's why we're doing this. I don't know if I said you can find him at unmadetees.com, and he also has an Instagram, Unmade Tees, and Facebook. That's Unmade Tees. So, but yeah, that is the theme clearly from just introducing everybody. But let's go ahead and just jump right into our discussion time. Charlene is gonna kind of lead us into it.
Yes, guys. So this second track here of the online Black Family Forum is dedicated towards processing racism as a family. We all know, we came out of 2020 and it was kind of sparked again with what happened to George Floyd. We saw a couple years ago Mike Brown's situation. We saw Freddie Gray. We saw Trayvon Martin. We saw Tamir Rice. We could keep going on and on and on and on. Even back to Rodney King. And then of course, so many different things. And so we know what we're dealing with, but this time we wanted to focus on, because we have so many different expertise here. We have the clinical aspect, we have the educator aspect, the wellness aspect. So we wanted to kind of unpack how we personally are processing racism with our family, and also from a professional standpoint, how should we be processing racism with our family? So that's kind of where we are right now with that and what we wanted to dive into. And so let's just get started with the first question. How do you or have you addressed the injustice with your child according to their age? And I guess we could spin it off. We got Tenisa first, then Chermica, then we have Jay. So if you guys want to go in that order, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. So my name is Tenisa Montgomery. As they said, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and so I also have a 15-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. So for me, I feel like a lot of the conversations that we had around what was happening with George Floyd, first and foremost, we did not watch the video more than once. It was not allowed in my house to watch that video more than once, because then we're actually talking about trauma that's called vicarious trauma, that the child then experiences vicariously by witnessing someone who looks like them being placed in a traumatic instance. And so then they can actually become traumatized by that. So one time is more than enough. And for my 10-year-old, I did not actually allow him to watch the entire video. Mostly I allowed him to watch like a news snippet. What the news showed, I felt was enough information for him to be triggered in the heart space of seeing himself or someone he loved, like an uncle, put in a position like that. So the conversation was, we're all gonna watch this together. We're gonna pause it because we have the remote, you know, nowadays you can pause anything. And when I see either of you responding, we'll pause it and we'll discuss. And so taking the time to break the information down in real time and saying, do you understand why these people are filming? Do you understand why they're not helping? Do you understand all the things that are happening in this video? How are you now feeling? Are you angry? What can you do with that anger to help your community? How can you assist in whatever small ways we can come up with that are safe? How can we be a proponent for change? Okay, so that was our conversation. And watching that one time, it was a larger conversation with my 15-year-old daughter, who obviously would have a more abstract understanding of what was happening, so she could understand the nuances. They say at the age of 12, you start to understand things abstractly. And so you don't need all of the context very concrete. So it doesn't come to the brain as right or wrong like it would before the age of 12. It's either right or it's wrong before 12. And so once we get to 12, we get to this abstract thinking where we can pull concepts that say, this is kind of right or kind of wrong, and try to put the pieces together differently so it sticks differently. And so our conversation was separate and more in depth about who she is, and understanding that you know, her potential, you know, future husband could be that person. That was her thought. And so I'm like, yeah, we have to definitely talk about that. What does it look like to be married to someone that could potentially happen, or that's your boyfriend, you know? So at 15, that's kind of where her mind is going. Well, if I have a son, that could be him, you know? And so that conversation, breaking down her thoughts and her feelings, and not saying, oh, don't worry, this will never happen, we'll have this fixed before you're married, was not something that I was willing to do. It was just straight talk and saying, you know, grandma experienced this same kind of stuff. Do you want to get her on the phone so we can all talk about this? Do you want to call Uncle Tracy or Uncle Sean? Those are my brothers. So we can all talk about this. Like, what do you need so that you can be okay and have an understanding, and know that if this conversation didn't wrap it all up for you in a neat little bow, and you want to come back next week about it, perfect, do it, right? And so giving them that space. And for my son, because I'm a single mother, saying, call Uncle Tracy and Uncle Sean. They will be very helpful for you in understanding where your feelings lie that I can't understand. So I try not to pretend that I know what a man would be experiencing while witnessing that. I know for myself, it was very helpless as I witnessed, in my mind, thinking that could happen to my brother or my uncle. And it felt helpless. So I could not imagine what it would feel like to be a man or a male child experiencing that or witnessing that. So I really left that to my brothers to assist my son with getting through that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that was really good. To kind of piggyback off what she was saying, I think it's important to keep things real with your own children, so that when they go to school, they'll know how to handle discussions and situations that come up. They'll have enough information to have a, educated discussion with their friends without it getting heated and possibly even getting turned into a fight. Because I've seen that as an educator where these situations cause kids to get angry, upset, and next thing you know, you're breaking up fights. Because they're not having a calm discussion, they're just talking at each other and very angry. So one thing with my kids, like my boys are 22 and 19, so they're older. So we just had a very real open discussion that we've always had since they were kids, but with them being older, it was just more of a safety thing, like be safe. Like one of my sons was so angry and upset, and just had all these thoughts like, I don't care about the police. I'm tired of the police. But, we had to have that discussion as a family. Like, yes, I understand you're feeling that way, but I want you to come home. I don't want you to go out there and encounter something with the police and then I have to come identify you or something bad happens. So let's have this discussion. Let's talk about it. But when you go out, I need you to be safe and to be smart. And that was for both of my sons. My daughter was 10 at the time. She's now 11. It was the same with her. We had an open discussion about the history of slavery, what, the laws, everything that's happened. She even, like your kids, talked to her grandparents about what they encountered. I told her stories that I knew from my own grandparents that occurred, just to give her an understanding of something she hadn't experienced herself as a child. So the other thing we did do, we watched the movie Selma. And she kind of went through that, took some notes and was understanding of, oh, okay, this is what happened. Yeah, it's not right. It's like, she was like, it's not right. But she, her questions were like, well, there's law, so why are people still doing it? Was her next question. And, that was our discussion, like, hey, every person in this world is different. We can't control what they do. We can only control what we do. We can't make anyone change. We can't make anyone make the right choices, but we as ourselves can try to make, good choices and to live a good life and hopefully teach others, the right way to handle situations. But, that's kind of how we handle it for her age group. Did you want me to talk about how I handle it as a teacher?
Sure. We can jump to Jamal and then circle back around to hear your perspective as a teacher.
Okay. All right. So how do we handle injustice as a parent with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old? Our children are little brown boys who have a lot of great energy and short attention spans. All right. So one way that we address injustice, because their fragile minds can't necessarily take in a lot of and understand some of the human experiences that we have. We have our own personal experiences with, and we know people and we have history of knowing this type of stuff. So addressing it with them is a little bit different when we break it down to their size. So what I like to do is use the art of storytelling. I create stories that engage their mind, keep their attention. A lot of them are fabricated stories that mimic or are allegories for real events that happen. So when I tell them a story, I'm breaking down the things that happen in real life, maybe, and I am giving them a scenario and giving them an overall outlook of this event, so that they don't have they don't feel involved in it necessarily as if they are taking on the trauma at that age, but they are seeing it as, hey, Jack went through something that was kind of scary. He had an experience that led him to be afraid. They know what that feels like. That he had an experience that caused them to want to lash out, made them angry, and their parents maybe had to get involved. But I create a scenario that they can maybe relate to even at their age, but not feel like they are attached to, in the sense that it took place. So if something does happen, I can recall this story and say, hey, do you remember when Jack had this experience? You remember how messed up maybe he was, like how it may have affected him. Did you kind of understand where he could feel sad, why he may have felt disappointed with some of the people that maybe harassed him or treated him wrongly in that situation? And they can say, yeah, I do relate and I do remember. The beauty of telling stories, which I hate the fact that we've kind of not used it as much as we did in our history. Telling stories allows the memory to kind of kick in a different way than, you know, if they're watching something on television. They have to create certain scenarios. They have to create a scenery for it, right? But they recall these things because they have a sequential story that they put together in their minds. And it's amazing how I may forget where I left off in the story, because I tell them stories like every day, every night. I may forget where I left off, and I'll ask them or I'll test them to see if they remember, and they will tell me exactly where I was. They'll tell me exactly what happened last, or what happened. I haven't walked me through, okay, so do you remember where he was, you know, he was on this walk and he came to the river? Can you tell me what happened from there? And they'll tell me exactly what happened. That is amazing. I think all of it, we should always use it. There's nothing like having a grandmother sit down one day and say, hey, one day I was coming home from work and it was raining. I remember it was at 4 o'clock. I came home and it was starting to get dark because it was that season. And I saw something dark in the road. I could not tell what it was. There's nothing like that, right? Now you're tuned in. You want to know exactly what's happening next.
No,
and
I do want to
really
know.
does line.
Right?
I know, I thought you were gonna finish the story.
Right, no. This is the example of like how captivating storytelling is. And I think we should use that so often in our relationships, just, you know, period. I think we should just use it on a regular basis. You don't always have to have a good, firm story. You can always create scenarios. And I think people sometimes are very good at falsifying things, unfortunately, but you can use that in a good way as far as coming up with a great scenario to keep the entertainment of a young child. So that's something that I do. I love using my creativity to stimulate the brain and allowing the young people to be captivated by something that could be unrelatable or somewhat dry. So storytelling is the art that I use to convey those messages.
Yes, I like that. Yeah. Storytelling, it sounds like a more real in time thing, like you're saying, that you can create for younger kids to be age appropriate, where Chermica was showing a movie and letting her older child kind of process that, a younger child being able to go with story. I mean, that's how they interpret their world, through play. And so getting them to be able to navigate through that and respond and kind of ask questions. I'm sure that there may even be questions that come up that I myself as an adult would not even ever think about, even if I'm creating the story.
Right.
So
seriously.
Yeah. So it makes you think, it gives you insight into your child as well and who they are.
Yeah.
And how they specifically would respond or be impacted by whatever the situation is.
Yeah, the insights I think are amazing. They tend to, you do get to kind of see and observe what the personality is of the child, because they will have different responses. some of them may want to, you know, hide and get away from the situation. The other one's like, no, I want to lash out. I want to have a response. Like I felt like I wanted to help him, right? And you get to see that and the differences in the child and how they might approach the situation. And I don't think that changes too much over time. You may see, you know, as they get older and become adults, you see them respond in that way just because of those personality differences and those, it's that inner design, you know?
Mm-hmm. Chermica, you had said you had some input about just from a teacher perspective. I know you answered as a parent, but from a teacher perspective.
As a teacher, it's kind of hard because you have to take your personal opinion of everything out when you're teaching kids. We can't go in there and say, oh, this was wrong and you can't do this. What I tend to do is when things happen, like for instance, when that issue happened at the Capitol and the kids came in talking about it, they're all talking, I can hear them. And I let them talk, you know, they're only 6. I don't interfere, I just listen because then that gives me a gateway to start a discussion with them and kind of let them lead, I facilitate it. So I heard the kids talking about it, and of course some had different opinions. You know, some kids were like, yeah, my parents said that was good, and you know, others was like, what are you talking about? That was the worst thing ever. And you know that you hear these are kids just talking, and as long as they weren't going at each other, I just let it go naturally. They were talking calmly. They knew exactly how to talk to each other just from us being in school all year and me teaching them how to have a proper discussion. You know, I just kind of listened. So then when class starts, I'm like, hey, I kind of heard you guys talking about this. So what do you think? So when one kid raises their hand saying, you know, their opinion, you know, the other kids are like, no, you shouldn't feel that way. And then that's where I can come in and say, hey, remember, we're all different. We're not here to judge each other or tell each other we're wrong. This is an open place where you can talk about however you feel, what you feel. So even if a kid, in my opinion, has the wrong perception about something, I'll ask them like, so explain to me how you think that's right. And that usually always sparks them to be like, I can't think of anything except that my parents said it was right. So when they come across like that, like, I don't know. And I was like, well, think about it. If you come up with something, you know, let me know. So then when I ask a kid who has the opposite opinion, how do you think about that? They're like, oh, because people got hurt. We're not supposed to hurt other people. We're supposed to help people. We're supposed to love people. So then that gives that one kid who thought it was okay based off what his parents said and couldn't really give his own opinion as to why, then heard this other kid and was like, and I can see the kid like, oh, I didn't think about that. So as an educator, I've come to understand that a lot of kids' opinions are just based on their parents. And as a teacher, I like to just give them an open perspective for them to choose. Like, hey, I can listen to my parents or I can kind of develop my own mindset. Yeah, I'm 6 and I kind of got to do what they say. But to me, at some point, I would like for them to become an adult or something, be like, hey, I remember that teacher taught me this. And so, yeah, my parents may think I should be this way, but I'm not sure if I should. Because I had all these friends in class who, despite my negative opinion on something, still cared about me, still shared pencils with me, still talked to me, still ate lunch with me and everything. So that's how I feel like as an educator, I can come in and kind of just give these kids a more of an open mindset without infringing my own personal opinion, but just creating an environment of care and love enough where these kids are like, maybe I should think differently, you know?
Yes. That's a really good point. Did anyone else want to add anything about that question? Okay, so moving on to, so we're talking about how you've addressed the injustice with your children, but how is this impacting our collective kind of mental health in general? What are some healthy ways that you guys individually have coped over this last, I want to say, year plus? What are healthy ways you've coped, and how do we actively develop them so that we're not developing unhealthy coping things. You have to actively do it. And so I'm curious as to how you yourself have been coping, but also with your children and with your family and maybe even your community. We can start with Jay. Do you want to start first?
Sure.
Okay.
The events that have taken place, I think the exposure of them back to back has produced I think it forces a response from the people. And when you continue to see something over and over again, and whether you are for it or against it, it's going to produce something. Yes, one thing it will produce obviously is a conversation. It's going to come up whether you want it to or not in your communities. Wherever you go, people are going to talk about it. And I think that conversation, once you start speaking publicly, your opinions, or if you're silent, your silence or your opinion is going to be exposed to the world. And I think, or to that your community. And I think that is important for people to know that their opinions are important in the world, to some degree, if they're the ones that are being traumatized by some of the events that's happening. So one thing that I have done to cope, is change my circle. All right. So one thing I think is super important for me is to know when I can actually deal with the situation around a group of people and it be healthy, or if it's not going to be healthy at all. So separate myself and removing myself from a certain group of people that may have a particular approach to the conversation that I'm not going to respond well in. I need to get from around because I think it'll be dangerous to try and force the conversation and you don't have an understanding ear, you don't have a concern, you haven't shown those things in smaller situations, less significant situations. So now here we are, we're on something serious that really does hit home. And now we're attempting to have that conversation. Now, I don't want to force that conversation. I'd rather, separate myself and kind of put myself around the people that I feel like can have a healthy conversation with a decent perspective concerning it. I can ask a question to people that I may not. You can ask certain questions to people that may not understand, that may not show that they actually have the ability to have a healthy conversation, and that can just be simply, what do you think happened, and what do you think the response is going to be as a result of this? And I think that kind of told me, and asking those type of questions, it kind of told me whether I could have that conversation with the person or not. But I think it was important for me to leave certain information there with the people to make them think about their perspective in a different way. Like you said, like just asking the questions and then framing it in a way that was, I would frame it in a way that was, okay, so if the person, like based on their response, if this is true, or if many people had this perspective, this could be the result. Do you agree? And how this could change somebody's approach to you as a person, or how this could change a person's like desire to even want to interact with you as a person, knowing your perspective. So I think just kind of separating myself was one way that I did, and also put myself around people where I can have a healthy conversation with them about it was another.
I guess
I was waiting. I didn't know. I didn't want to interject until they, you know.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Either one of you.
I think for me personally, it's been an intense last year because clinically as a professional, we are taught how to separate our stuff from our client stuff. And usually our stuff is in our history. And then we're separating whatever triggers we have that were in our history from what the client's triggers are and what's happening in the session. But over the last year plus, what the client's concern is also my concern in live, living color, active right now. So you're talking about how you're having conversations with your son about George Floyd, and I'm thinking about how I had a conversation last night with my son about George Floyd, right? Yeah. So it's a very interesting dynamic where we expose ourselves in a clinical way and we reserve back the emotionality, but acknowledge that we are standing with you in acknowledgement that this is happening to the Black community as a whole. So there's a very feather thin, fine line that we walk as professionals when we say, I'm experiencing this simultaneously. So then we have to be conscious that we don't now take over the session and share all of our concerns about what we had to talk about with our families, but that we're keeping the professional margin there by being authentic and admitting we are both as Black people experiencing this circumstance, right? And also saying, but this is your time. Tell me what you're experiencing. Let me help you find some coping skills. And then making suggestions. For me, at that point, it's more like suggestions based off of, if it's a client that I've been with for a while, suggestions based off of things that have worked for them in the past, or teaching new coping skills for myself. I practice mindfulness. I teach my clients mindfulness. And so on those days, I'll say, you know what? Maybe we don't talk at all today. Maybe we spend this entire hour breathing, relaxing, affirming ourselves, listening to affirmations. So I have some affirmations that I'll play in the background and teach breathing techniques that coincide with the affirmation, like a diaphragmatic breathing, which is a deep inhale through the nose and an exhale out of the mouth slowly. And so I'm playing affirmations in the background, or I'm reading affirmations as the client is taking those deep and slow inhales and exhales to kind of inhale the affirmation of, you know, you are whole and you are well, you are complete. And then the exhale is like releasing stress and anxiety and tension. And you would be surprised at how hard those exhales are. When you say release stress, anxiety, and tension, it's like, ah, and it's like, it's great. Yeah, let it go. Yeah. So for me personally, prayer is very important. And I pray over my office. I pray that everybody that enters this space finds peace and rest. And so it's not a surprise when people come in this office and say, your office is so peaceful. And I say, amen. So for me, yeah, prayer is very important. And so teaching those skills, and you can go to like Kaiser Permanente, their website. They have affirmations for stress. They have, oh, good night. Kaiser Permanente.
We'll find it and I will put it in the chat to all the panelists and attendees. We'll find that.
Yes, but I will say that the website is old school, so you cannot access it on your phone or tablet. You have to, either a laptop or a desktop.
People are not trying to give away free resources. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
They said we'll do that in the past.
So just so you know, you can't access it on the laptop or, on a tablet or a cell phone. It has to be a laptop or a desktop computer. But I would advise like just putting the shades down and putting that on. There's some great free resources like, there it is. There's some great free resources like that I kind of make my kids do. 2 days ago, there was a free crystal singing bowls thing on Meetup, if anybody knows of Meetup. So it had a crystal singing bowls where basically it's a series of crystal bowls that someone learns how to play in a rhythmic pattern that kind of actually decreases stress and helps you to relax. And so that was like at 8 o'clock at night, and I made everybody lay down, and I put it on, and I was like, afterwards, good night. So everybody was all pieced out. So that's kind of something to look for. Like crystal singing bowls is good if you can find a YouTube channel that has something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, and I kind of do this at school too. When I'm at home, of course, I pray. I've meditated because this past year has been just very stressful, just personally and as a teacher. So usually as a teacher, your personal stuff, leave at the door, go to work. But now that work is like stressful, online kids, face-to-face kids, it was just a lot. So I've taken a lot more time to pray over my home, my classroom. I meditate more. I even turn on like some meditation music when I first walk into my class. I turn it on so when the kids walk in, it's peaceful music, and we can get their positive energy going for the day. The other thing that I started doing is working out, doing yoga, just to kind of keep my mind fresh and to keep like a lot of the negativity going on out, just so I can, just be a better person, a better teacher, a better mom, all the way around. The other thing that I do at home is I have candles everywhere. I love lighting my candles, especially when it starts to get dark. Turn off my lights. My daughter loves it. I put on candles. We have like salt lamps around the house too. And we just kind of like put on my daughter has like a chill playlist music list that we just play and just kind of do that before we go to bed, to kind of just, to go with prayer and to kind of release everything that we had going on for that day. Another thing that Jamal said that was good that I've learned to do as well is check my circle of friends. And I think it's important to be able to be real about your feelings about what's happening, in the Black community. And I want to be able to get my real feelings out. I'm angry, I'm upset, I don't like it. I want to fix it. I want to figure it out. And though I have a very good circle of friends that I can vent to and talk to, and we can, talk to each other, about different things we can do and talk about our real feelings to each other. Because of course we can't go to work with that. So it's very good to have that circle of friends that you can just give all that anger, everything you're feeling to, so that you don't go to work, you don't go to work that way. Another thing that I do with my kids at school, Go Noodle has like a kind of like a little yoga, some yoga videos, meditation videos that I'll stop during the day. It's like 5 minutes to kind of, decompress. When all this was going on and we were at school, like we had a lot more of that, just because the kids were, even like little kids were kind of riled up, especially the ones that had siblings that were in middle school, because my school's K-8. So it's just a lot to try to decompress all those negative feelings, just enough to get through the day. And, enough for me to be like, I understand how you guys are feeling, but, have that discussion with your parents at home, really don't want to get into that here. Like school is just your safe place. So those are the things that I've learned to cope with, both personally and professionally. And some of them kind of go together and kind of has helped me just kind of clear my mindset and make sure my mindset is one that is conducive for trying to solve the problem peacefully or look for ways to solve it as much as I can.
Yeah, it just makes me think that when this type of stuff is going on, how important it is to be implementing those self-soothing things. It's almost like that stuff needs to increase as the stressors increase, when you might be exhausted and be like, oh, I just need to sleep. Oh, I just need to like watch this show and zone out. But instead, I mean, literally what all of y'all are saying is that really that's the time to kind of dial up the yoga, the meditation, the things that bring you kind of peace and joy. Yeah, I think about, for me, like I had to increase working out, like moving my body really is a huge stress reliever for me. So I was like, I mean, I'm gonna be tired to get healthier, because that means I gotta get up really early in the morning, but it protected my mental health in those times. Another thing that came up while y'all were answering was, someone said we have to recognize that there are very few places where we can go where we are safe. We need self-care practices. Stop seeing a lot of Black slave movies. That is how I choose not to re-traumatize myself. So also the idea of how not re-traumatizing ourselves. And that's different for different people, but being aware of things that are triggering you, I think, to a point where you're just stuck. And now you can't even be present to thrive in some way in your own life. Because we have a life still to live in the midst of all of the mess. So
For real.
right.
I would definitely agree. I think it's dangerous to not take care of yourself in these situations. Because some of us know, and we've been there, like we've kind of had these explosive moments, but that pressure will produce it. And I think if we don't like take the time to, disengage from a lot of what's happening, if we are overwhelmed with a lot of media and the conversations and so on and so forth, if we don't take the time to decompress, and go find those therapeutic times. Lighting the candle is therapeutic. That's some good energy. Incense, getting away, going outside, being in nature, I think is very healthy for us. Sleep can be therapeutic, so I wouldn't write that off. But I would say that.
Yes, it can be restorative. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
absolutely.
And it can be a form of avoidance. You got to be careful not to do that.
Yeah, you're right.
The therapist just,
Nothing to do about it, so I just go to sleep, and I'm like, that's avoidance. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
You sleep better after you get a good workout.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Sleep better after you work out. That's
exactly.
All right. So I like to get out in nature and just go have some good time, feel the wind, be outside, got a garden in the back. And that's what it's funny. I started the garden during all this mess. And I think that was, I didn't intentionally say, oh man, I want to go start a garden as a result of this going on. It just kind of happened. The desire was there, but this kind of helped push me in that direction and find that therapy in doing it. So it's good to, I guess, kind of go out, be in nature, find that time. A lot of people go on walks. A lot of my people that I know, they might go on walks, hit the trail, like you say, work out. I like to climb trees personally. I enjoy being in the tree. That is therapeutic for me. So I will go find a good tree while I'm out, and either with my boys or by myself. When I'm going away, I just kind of go and hide in the tree. All right. So that's therapeutic for me. I get to use muscles that I don't typically engage on a regular basis. And I get to go
on your position first before trying to.
Yes, I'm not telling y'all that this is for you. This is for me. This is therapeutic for me, and I've been climbing trees for some time. So yes, please don't try this at home if you are not able to do that and be safe, and your muscles are not ready to handle that type of stuff. Just don't go trying to climb the nicest tree you can find. But I like to do it because I like being in the wind, and I think I kind of get a good breeze when I'm up there in the tree, and I get to just kind of see the world from a different view. It kind of takes me out of my world, and I'm able to see things and enjoy things that I don't get the chance to see and enjoy in the hustle and bustle of my life. So I need that break. It is very therapeutic, and it's something that I wouldn't turn down in my therapy process. I think it is good. Some people can, do other things and stay in the house. I personally, I need to be outside or doing some type of music engagement in order to find that therapy. So it's about knowing yourself.
I just wanted to say really quickly as we segue actually into this next question that we're going to go into. I think hearing the Black male perspective, that's so pivotal, because what I feel like I hear you saying is like, that's a space, being in a tree is a space where you can sort of feel free, and so when you think about Black men seeing these images and things, and, if we can find ways to kind of support them as they're trying to find different avenues that they can kind of release these things, and process these things in their own way. As we're talking about dealing with it as a Black family, I think that's an important point. But next thing we want to kind of tackle, guys, is what is your opinion on how do we live in any type of freedom or wholeness while we know that the world that we're living in is still facing these things? Like, I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on that, because the problem is not going away right now. This is a reality that we're living in. There is some level of progress, but we're still, we still see these things happen, right? We entered into 2021 and we saw what happened at the Capitol. So we're going to continue to be in a space where we're confronted by these things. How do we seek to be whole and to feel a sense of freedom as we move forward? How do we do that? And we can kind of go in line, Tenisa, Chermica, and then Jay.
Okay. The one thing that I want to mention is that freedom is a psychological need. That means that we require freedom to feel like whole people. And when we don't meet a need in a healthy way, we will most certainly meet it in an unhealthy way. So the fact that it's a need, it's like, I'm hungry, I have to eat. I'm bound, I have to find freedom, right? So if we look at it from the perspective of saying it is a need, then that hopefully changes our mindset around whether or not we access it in a healthy way, and acknowledge the ways that we're accessing freedom in unhealthy ways. That would be like, if I feel bound in a house and I'm drinking more often because I feel free when I drink. So now we've accessed a need in an unhealthy way by turning to alcohol. But what other ways can we access freedom in this space is up to the individual. Maybe you've been thinking I should start sewing, or you've been thinking I should start a garden, or you've been thinking, I remember that book I was supposed to finish reading, or the book I'm supposed to finish writing, whatever the access point is, find that access point so that you can find freedom. Because if you don't find it in a quality way that benefits your life moving forward in progress, you most certainly will see it crop up in an unhealthy way that moves your life backwards. So just being free, I would think, how can I move my life forward while the world seems stuck, might be the feeling. And so then you think, do I need to make masks because I can sew? I'll make masks for people who need masks in the hospitals or wherever they may need them. However you can access healthy freedom that you can incorporate and quit when you're done. Like, I picked up sewing. I was like, oh, you know what? I really wanted to sew. I think I'm going to get a sewing machine. And I got all this fabric and I got this sewing machine and I made one dress and 2 skirts several masks and said, I quit. I thought that was for me, but that's why I never started sewing, because I didn't really want to do it. I sold the sewing machine and I gave the fabric away to the Goodwill. It didn't change anything. It was just an opportunity for me to explore a path that I thought I wanted to explore at a previous time in life, realized it wasn't for me, and released it. So don't feel the obligation to say, oh, I said I was going to sew, I'm going to learn how to sew. No, that's not for me. You know, release those things that you pick up, you think they're for you. If they're not, just release them, because then it becomes another thing holding you bound. And so that was just one experience of real true life that I thought I wanted to sew, and I don't.
Okay, I think one of the key things to all of this is that we all need to realize that there's only one of us. And if we realize there's only one of us, we're going to love who we are. We're going to take care of who we are so that we can help others. And I think that's so very important for people to understand, that you can only help other people if you yourself are whole. And the only way you're going to be whole is to take care of yourself, love yourself. That's the only way. And one of the things that I started doing was, I had 2 bikes in my garage that I haven't ridden them since probably like 6-7 years. So I took the time, I took my bikes to the shop, got them fixed. Me and my daughter start riding bikes. We would get on our bikes. My daughter would be like, I think I just want to get some sun, or I just want to think. We would just go ride our bikes, just enjoy the outside, and just to kind of get our thoughts together, enjoying nature, just, because we've all been in quarantine and all that stuff. I think I found a newfound love for just being outside, going outside, not have to rush and go to all these other places, but just going outside, enjoying something that's free that I don't even have to pay for. So I think that it's very important to piggyback off what Tenisa was saying, for us to explore just other positive qualities or options about ourselves that we just never did before, and to figure out positive ways we can even help our community, like what you guys are doing right now. That's something positive. You're taking something that's happening negative in our community, in the world, and just bringing people together to kind of talk about it. How are we coping with it? How are we dealing with it? Getting this type of information out to other people is helpful. I think that's very important for moving forward, for us all to be whole, is to just make sure that we have that line of people that we communicate with. We get the word out there on different things we can do to help other people. It's great for me, even for myself, to be on here, to know what Tenisa does. Then I can say, when a person comes and talks to me, I'm like, hey, I know this person, you can go talk to her, she can help you out with this. It's just a great way to help other people that may be down and out, or dealing with this in a negative way, or doesn't know how to cope with it, to be able to say, hey, I know this person, here, call them. I know several people that were going through things, and I was able, because I myself went to therapy, I was able to say, hey, here's my therapist, give her a call. Like, I feel like she can help you. And those people were all like, thank you for doing that, because I was in a negative spiral going downwards. So to be able to help another person get through that, and to help them, is a good way, but you'll only be able to do that if you yourself are whole. Can't help, if I'm all messed up and I'm talking to a whole bunch of messed up people, we are not going to help each other. So I think it's important.
To piggyback off that statement, I realized the importance of unity, but I think it's dangerous to attempt to be unified if you're not in the right mindset. If people are not on the same page, and their perspectives are off, what it will cause is, I think, more friction than anything else. I love the thought of unity and us coming together, but I think, like you said, I think we do have to be around the right type of people in order to find a sense of belonging or a sense of unity. Being unified with the wrong people would cause problems more than anything else, or attempting to be unified with the wrong people. So I think first, like that, identifying the person that you can say, man, we agree on these particular things that are core values for me and my family. Let's go from there. Let's build from there. And this is how you develop a community. You know, we're not necessarily supposed to be friends with every individual that looks like us, and you don't have to, but you do want to be unified with people that look like you here, like what you value. And so you want to be you want to have like-minded unity first. Then you can produce, like, you know, you can expand to different things. Like, you know, birds of a feather, they say, flock together. And I think that's for good reason. You know, they work together in a way that a lot of different birds they can't communicate all the time the same way and work in a way that that is productive all the time. So building your core circle, I think we do need the community, absolutely. And it takes a village to raise a child, for real. To think that you can raise your child, your daughter, your son by yourself, I think that's dangerous. And it will cause problems with that child, I think, as they get older and see that the world is full of other people that have different opinions and perspectives than you. I think it's good to invite other people into that maturing process of your child and into, you know, their growth, but you just want to choose the right people and take that time to do that. So that's something that I feel like is necessary, especially parents that have, single mothers with Black boys as their children. If they have brown boys and they're not privy how to address their children, how to engage their sons and make sure that they're not growing up without having proper stimulation in one area and then over stimulated in another, not being aware of their needs, not understanding their needs. I think that's very, very dangerous over time for that child. Even though it may not show up when they're younger, they may just be compliant. They may just be a child that is, you know, obedient at the time, but then when they get older, it'll expose some of the hurt, some of the dangerous, you know, effects of, you know, them not being engaged by other people outside of the community, or outside of your household. So I think it's important, one, to protect our children, but how we protect them is by creating a community for our children that allows them to be engaged and stimulated in a healthy way without losing that protection that is necessary for them. Hey, you know, there's a certain amount of time that they need to spend with a man if they don't have a man in their life, but you want to choose a good, healthy man that can spend time with your children and lead them in a way. And I think it does, it has to happen on a consistent basis. It doesn't have to be one man that you're leaning on either. You can find a collective and kind of do some process to interviewing these men to see what they can offer. I think it's important.
I say that as you say that, I remember like when we were talking about this earlier, like before privately off of this thing together. And I was saying like, my son's math tutor is a man. My son's swim teacher is a man. Obviously, my son's barber is a man, you know, and all of them, they have the right to talk to him about Black boy problems in the midst of what they're teaching him. You know, we're swimming. Listen, when I talk like this, you need to listen, right? And I can't do that for him, but he requires that for his life to be well. And so,
absolutely,
I know what I can't do. And that's a thing that Black women have to understand.
Right, absolutely. I think some people do get it, but there is a sect of people that want to they want to control their children and protect them, but that's dangerous because children do need, like we said, their freedom also, even at a young age. How do they know that they have a sense of freedom? Where do they get it from? And I think those are questions that we have to ask ourselves. We know that we need freedom. We know we need our alone time as adults. We know we need those things, but when do our children get them and how do they get it? Because they need it also. And they don't know how to communicate that to their parents as much because they don't even know that that's what they're longing for sometimes. Sometimes they can engage. I remember when I was a child, as a teenager, I told my mom, I said, Mom, I can't sit in the house. I just can't stay here in the house. Like, I know you want us to be here and just, and active and doing our thing here and be protected. I understand you want to protect us, but I cannot stay in this house. I will explode. Like, my personality has to get out. So, and it's funny because when we were younger, they would tell us to go outside. They would tell us to go outside and don't come back in until you're hungry or you're bleeding. We had already eaten, most likely, and we already had a drink. They literally put a jug of water outside. They put a jug of water outside when we were thirsty. And they said you can drink from the hose out there too. Exactly. We had our bikes, we would ride our bikes, and we would be all over the place. I mean, stuff that most people would feel very uncomfortable with today. But man, we would go down to the lake, and this was like 2 or 3 miles away from my house. We would ride our bikes all the way down to the lake, hang out, throw rocks at the alligators, and come back home. We would play football at different people's houses, basketball at random people's houses. We'd just be all over the place. And it wasn't the safest of places in the world, in some people's opinion, but it was my home at the time. So we felt like we were quite comfortable there, even though we were taught to recognize danger and hide ourselves to a degree. We were taught to, separate ourselves from people that seem to be, hey, you act like you trying to get people in trouble. I can't hang around you. Like that was part of our training. I think that's what's necessary in order to allow your children to have the freedom that they need is to, forgive me, I got this fly here, man. It's so annoying. But in order for them to have the sense of freedom that they need, you have to equip them to be able to handle situations when they come up, know when to get away from that situation if it looks like this. Identify, hey, there's 2 people over here, and I see there's one cop that seems to be riding his bike around them all the time. I don't want to hang around those people. Why? Because obviously they're getting some what we consider negative attention. They are sitting here hanging out. They done pulled out a lighter and a cigarette. Okay, that's not something I know my parents want me to be around. Let me dip. You know what I'm saying? It's likely that if I stick around here long enough, they're gonna offer me the cigarette, and I'm gonna have to be in a situation where I'm gonna get criticized maybe for not taking the offer, or just having to say, nah, man, I'm good on that, and going from there. I just feel like when you equip your child with just continually rehearsing to them, some of the things that you care about, them, how much you care about them, and how you want them to engage the world, how they have to in order to stay safe, then you can feel a little bit more comfortable that, hey, if something does happen, they know to run home as fast as they can. If something does seem like it's uncomfortable, they know that they need to just stay away from it and make it known to me or my spouse that, hey, this is something that I should not, this happened, or going to the safest place to where you can ask a parent, somebody else's parent to call home So you can let your parents know where you are and that either you're safe or that something you feel unsafe. So yeah, I think those are things that stands out to me, man.
All right, well, we did have something on the agenda. We did have a guided imagery exercise led by April.
Yeah, I think just because of time, maybe we should just do Tenisa's activity, and then that'll give plenty of time to do our last question and some Q&A.
All right, so 5 questions for self-care exercise. So
the 5 questions are about the 5 senses. So whenever we have circumstances that are overwhelming, we can always use grounding as an exercise in whatever space. I mean, you can do it in your office, you can do it in your car. There's anywhere you are. People don't have to necessarily know that you're doing it, or if you don't care, you know, just do it. So you can ask yourself, like, what are 3 things that I can smell? And then you just are tuning into what you're experiencing in the moment. What are 2 things that I can feel? So then you maybe reach around you and find something to touch and just ask yourself about the texture and about the sensation on your fingertips. Do you like it? Is it annoying? And then like 1 thing I can taste. Maybe you have leftover coffee in your mouth, or maybe you'll realize that you need to eat, something like that. You ask yourself these questions, and as you're asking them, you're being inquisitive about the question. So the one question leads you to ask more questions, but we're using the senses. And I like to think that everything starts with a cleansing breath. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do now is I'm going to walk you through an exercise, and I'm basically going to go 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we'll be doing 3 things that I can see, 2 things that I can touch, and 1 thing I can taste. Okay. Just so you have an idea of how the exercise plays out. But we would always use the 5 senses because they're always available to us. So before we get started, I'm going to ask everyone to find themselves in a comfortable position where their bodies are in a natural position. So back is straight, your feet are flat to the ground, both feet with your feet on the ground. So you might have to do some readjusting, and take your hands and just place them on your lap. And once you're in that position, you'll already notice that your body is kind of like, okay, what's next? Right? And this is how we get into mindfulness. When our body starts to get used to these kind of activities, then it starts to actually be more inquisitive and saying, what's next? Well, what's next? So then we're going to learn the cleansing breath, which is a deep inhale through the nose and an exhale out of the mouth, making a ha sound. And the second one is a little bit slower. Inhale and exhale. Noticing the body relaxing. This is the slowest one yet. Inhale and exhale. Allowing the body to quiet and rest. Acknowledging that the energy in your body is feeling a release in some way. I ask you now to open your eyes and look around at 3 things that you are inquisitive in your space. Let's pick 3 things. Identify those 3. Once you've noticed the 3 things in your space, I like to pick something that I maybe forgot that I had in my space. And then I look at those things, that thing I forgot was in my space. And I'm going to ask you to take yourself and go and collect one of those things that was in your space. So with yourself, physically get up, pick one of the things up that you were inquisitive about, and bring it back to where you are right now. And I know this is a strange request because I shifted the activity, but just go with it. As you have your item in your hand, we're going to step down, and now we're going to be so inquisitive about this item that we're examining it as if we have never seen it before, or we're wondering when we got this thing or where it came from. Now that we're closer to it, is a memory coming about where you got it or where it came from? Was it a happy moment attached to that thing that you have? Was it a moment of, you know, I gotta have this item that I somehow forgot about? And really examine the thinking around the item that you have in your hand. Question the item. Now I want you to run your fingers, just your fingertips, across the item. Notice how that item feels. Is that a texture that you like? Does it feel nice? Is it slick or cool or cold or warm? Does that sensation feel pleasing or dissatisfying? This is the process of mindfulness where we are just examining things as they are without judging, just acknowledging. And now I want to bring to your awareness that whatever you were thinking about 3 minutes ago before we started this activity, how far away it is in this moment. And this is the benefit and the reward of mindfulness. When we are able to separate ourselves from the world around us that gives us distress and take a moment to so dive into what is presently here and now with us, that it gives us a break from the emotional connections or feelings or thoughts that we were having, and gives us a new experience in the presence. And that is one of the mindfulness activities that I teach to people so that they can escape in moments of distress. So I actually would like to hear from people about whether or not they were actually able to escape whatever was happening prior to this exercise, if anybody wants to speak.
I felt like I did. I felt like it was good to be in the moment, feeling the texture and thinking about, I like when you said thinking about the origin of the item or how it got here, or, you know, so yeah, I feel like it was actually good. I kind of lost myself in that exercise.
Yeah.
I did also. I happened to choose the Rubik's Cube. And I've been curious about them for some time, but I to acknowledge whether this is cold or what temperature it is in my hand was definitely unique for me, because that's something that's not going to be a thought typically. But to engage it on that level was quite interesting. It was.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good. It really does help, like, because I kind of zoned out for a second. So it's like, it gives your mind a break from like that's why I said meditation is good when you're like busy and all over the place. Like if you just take 5 minutes to just sit and relax. I kind of zoned out and was just focusing on that one item and where it was bought, what was happening at the time, how I was feeling. So it really does work. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jayon, you had a nostalgic moment. You said that you had been thinking about Rubik's Cubes for a long time. So I'm like, there had to be some nostalgia that popped in there like, man, I've watched this a long time. And how in the world did I come to that idea? And that's great. You could have went on for days with that train of thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, I've been curious about Rubik's Cubes, but I ended up grabbing this because there was a conversation that I had with my brother that, I was telling him I was trying to learn it. He said, you have to learn the algorithm? And I was like, okay, the algorithm. He said, yeah, just learn the algorithm to it. Mm-hmm. And that sparked my interest because algorithms are interesting. If you
some.
Yes, for some. For some. But if you get it, once you get the algorithm, it's like you've unlocked the code to, to unlock the next code, I guess. So it's quite interesting for you to actually understand, okay, it's like, oh, I know how once you decorated one room, now you understand you have a foundation for decorating another room, maybe with different colors or a different approach, right? So that's pretty much how it was. But I definitely had some nostalgia going on with that, just from a conversation that I had a few years ago. So yeah.
April, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the touch piece was the texture. Thinking about the texture was good for me. And then what I picked up also kind of brought back positive memories. So I was surprised at how connected I was to the object. I mean, it's like the MLK thing, but I remember that my husband and I got this when we were, really young. We've been married 10 years now, and we got it the first time we went to the MLK monument in DC. And I just remember it was a thing like, do we really have the money for this? But we're like, this is important. Like, we need to have this. We're Black. This should be in our house. And looking back now, I'm like, yeah, it brought back good memories.
I know I've had conversations like that in my head.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing
is, listen, we be like that. We gotta hold ourselves accountable in those situations. But yeah, I think the largest thing is, and first and foremost, like, I want everyone to recognize that even as I said, this is what we're gonna do, and I changed the activity, I don't apologize for changing my plan. Okay, I informed you because you were going on a journey with me, but I never said, and I apologize for changing the plan. I said, I know it's not what I said we was going to do, but just go with me, right? So I acknowledged that the plan was changed, but I continued to progress. And those who didn't want to progress didn't have to, but they knew I was going somewhere different. And I think that's part of what we're talking about when we have community. Is everyone doesn't have to agree with the change of plan, okay? But as the person leading, I do acknowledge that the plan changed, right? So in the midst of the process, I'm being mindful that I'm taking you somewhere, and I started out saying one thing and ended in another direction because the plan changed, for the fact that I felt that it would be better guided this way, right? So we don't have to apologize. Like, I didn't apologize for getting rid of that sewing machine. The plan changed, okay? I don't apologize. I just say I acknowledge that I changed my mind because I'm human and I'm allowed to do that. We all have that freedom to change our minds. So before I accepted this treatment, I changed my mind. You can't treat me like that anymore, right? That's fine.
I think that has a lot to do with expectations. People expecting things from other people causes a lot of problems sometimes, especially if they're not communicated expectations. I think it's dangerous I realize, okay, so I've gone on this journey of recognizing, one, when I have expectations and trying to get rid of them. Because expectations don't necessarily help in a situation where you guys don't have an agreement on something. But I think we go about life without having any agreement with people, whether it be family, friends, coworkers, and we have expectations on them. And then they get unmet. And then now you have problems because you're expecting this person to do something that they never said that they were going to do, or to act a certain way when, you know, if somebody, I can see if somebody say, hey man, I'm gonna act the same way every day with you. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we get along. I'm gonna treat you the same all the time. I'm always gonna have the same attitude. But that's not how life works. And people don't make that agreement because they know they can't keep it. But we expect them to do that a lot of the times. And we love the people that seem to be able to keep themselves in order, but then we get frustrated with people when they come and they don't want to talk, you know? I just don't feel like talking today. But why is that upsetting somebody that, you know, is supposed to be understanding, or as a friend, you just have to accept that. But the reality is people just have expectations on them to just kind of be a certain way every day, you know? And I think get rid of those expectations, it really does liberate your experiences. In my experience, it does liberate.
It's like,
I
just think of the fact of being human.
Yeah, if we are just, I mean, my thing is I expect people to show up as their whole selves at all times. And I show up as my whole self all the time. And if my whole self today is not in sync with your whole self today, that's okay. Because some of the people that I have known the longest and have loved the longest, sometimes we're out of sync. And that's okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not the norm, though. Unfortunately, that is not the norm. Show up as yourself. We know that.
Yes, and that's okay. Because look, people who don't show
doesn't
up
mean you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying. It's unfortunately it is not the norm. Right. But we do need to be free in that way. And all we can do, like you were saying, is choose to go on that journey. And there may be people who come and who don't. Yeah.
So for I just had a thought and I think it's trying to run away from me. Expectations where people are like, they're getting disappointed and frustrated with people because they show up and as friends or family, they're not doing the thing that they're expecting them to do. And that has caused, I think, a lot of conflict. One, I remember I had a job and I just got rid of it because I think the expectations were there that I had not agreed upon at all. But I think I was working in a school, and there was a principal that she expected me to just kind of have this undying commitment to this school, and the children, and so on and so forth. So one of the first things she asked me, she wanted me to do was she wanted me to contribute to the school in a way that it wasn't even in the contract at all. Taking on like me. I'm a tech in the school. I come there to maintain the systems, make sure the network is working just fine. And she wanted me to pull small groups out of the classrooms and spend time teaching them and helping their scores, bringing their scores up from.
I've heard this before.
This is one of the first things after the interview, after my first day starting. She's like, so I was thinking maybe you can help contribute, to like, and I'm like, as I'm looking at her, she's like, I wouldn't ask the last tech this. And I just feel like, because you have some history in educating young people that you could be good at, you would do good at this. I said, listen, that's not in there. You crossing a lot of lines right now. But I obliged because I had a desire to see the young people grow. And I think she used that against me, and next thing you know, once you agree to do that, okay, now you're doing lunch duty and you're doing bus duty and you're doing all this other stuff. And it's like, you know what? you have expectations on me that I'm not willing to keep. And I have to communicate to you, hey, no, I'm not, this is not okay. Now I got to pull back out of that and say, this is not healthy. It's going to an unhealthy area and rope it off. But I think it's a lot of situations where if we examine ourselves, like, man, am I upset with this person because I had unhealthy expectations from them? Like, why am I upset with this person? And a lot of times it has come down to, I was expecting them to do or be something that they never told me that they would be.
Well, then that's just a conversation. Like, I feel like, when we're talking about these systems, the family systems that are Black systems, we're talking about systems that are so overlapping and so intertwined and involved in each other's lives and dictating and giving roles and assigning roles to people. That the trouble comes is when we say, I'm not going to be this person in the family that watches everybody's kids. Yeah, and I'm saying that because that was my role in that family. And I'm like, guys, I'm moving because you guys aren't hearing me when I say I'm not watching y'all kids, right? So it was just something that in order for me to break out of that role, I had to leave that system.
Wow.
And the hard truth is, when I go back home, which is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, guess what my family wants to do? Put me back in that role that they gave me.
Wow.
You see, so it's not that that we have to stay in that role. It's just that when we look at the family systems that we have, which are usually very matriarchal, which means there's a grandmother and then the aunts that are above you, and then your cousins that are older than you that are above you, and then your little cousins, and everybody from here tells everybody down the road who they're going to be and the role they're going to play. And when you're in a system that has assigned you a role in the family, it is for the benefit of the system, right? So the system can stay whole and intact. Notice I did not say well. Okay, whole and intact. And so breaking out of systems that restrict us and restrict our ability to be an individual is a struggle for us in the Black community, because everybody's been given a role. Even the person who is constantly in trouble with the police has been given a role. Right? Don't be over there with your cousin so-and-so. He always getting arrested. he's given that role, and then we wonder why he is always being arrested. Right? So we give him a role, we give him a title, we give him and we say action, and we send them off, and that's their script for their life if they choose to stay in that system. And we gotta find ourselves in places where we are discovering who we are and not allowing our systems to tell us who we are, but that we redefine ourselves for ourselves. And I'm not saying that's not scary. I'm not saying that it's easy. It is a challenge, but it is also worth it.
I agree. I think that what you described, Tenisa, that community kind of family system thing, I think that plays itself out within our community as Black people as a whole too, because I found myself in positions where maybe my passion or my love for my people caused me to say, yeah, okay, yeah, this is okay. Yeah, this is okay. I'm helping the community. It's okay. It's okay. And then you get to a point where you're like, this is not okay anymore. And you may go and try to challenge and go and try to ask. And then eventually you have to remove yourself. You have to leave. And I've had to do that as well in work situations. I just had to leave because, and it's hard because we have this inner part of ourselves. We're like, man, I want to help. I want to help support the community. But yeah. So I think the passion.
And I think that's one of the themes that I saw in our first talk when we were talking about protecting Black children from sexual abuse. It seems like one of the themes were it's important that your child knows that they have a voice. And it seems like that's what we're saying here. I think as Black people, we're trying to navigate ourselves in a world where it's already injustice and things going on for people, but more so as Black people. And we're at a place where we're starting to see it and we're trying to change. And it's like, you just see, again, like a lot of people have unhealthy situations at work. But then when you're Black, you got the unhealthy situation at work, you got the unhealthy situation with the police, you got the unhealthy situations in your family, which are a result of the fact that you're Black a lot of times because of the systematic factors that impacted your family. So I love what we're talking about because it's helping Black people to really sort of find their voice, evaluate how these systemic factors have impacted us, and to find just a sense of freedom. Like we're fighting for our freedom in a very real way in so many different aspects. And so that's why, again, we are advocates for counseling and therapy and seeking out, especially Black mental health experts, because that seems to be like the central thing that's going to help us to really find those tools to break free in whatever situation we find ourselves in, you know, that family piece, that career piece, the abuse piece, you know. So I just love what we're talking about. So then we talked about a lot, guys. So I guess, where do we go from here? You know, as we kind of cap it off and kind of, you know, wind down a little bit, where do we go from here?
So if go ahead.
I think that we live by creating like a sense of purpose. And if we understand that we all are here for a reason, we're all here, each of us has a unique gift, ability, we'll understand that we can use that to move on, to help make things better, just one step at a time. I think if we, like we've been talking about, having all these undue expectations, if we understand that things probably won't change overnight, may not change in the next week, but if we all collectively, just imagine if each person in the world found their purpose, found their gift, their ability that would help the world would be a much better place. And if we all did our unique part, then collectively together, we can make everything better. So I think that if we just keep putting out there with whoever we encounter, hey, you know, it's important to find your purpose, you know, let me try to help you with that. Let me share my story. Let's, you know, figure something out. If we can just do that with the people that we come in contact with, then I think that that'll give us a sense of purpose so that we won't feel stressed out, overwhelmed, or feel like we're not doing our part or not doing something. We all have unique giftings and abilities, and we're in different areas. Some people have access to change the law, lawmakers and all that stuff. You know, we're not there yet, but we can do what we can do on the grassroots level in our community, in our everyday lives, in our careers, our jobs. We can do all those things that would eventually help impact those things.
I want to say, Chermica, you are definitely like a very optimistic first grade teacher. I love it. We need more first grade teachers that have your optimism. It's amazing at that level of understanding that kids in your classroom are getting your level of optimism. I mean, amen. You are right where you belong. I could not be a first grade teacher. And God love you, bless you, and keep you, girl. I love that optimism. I think I'm an optimistic person. I think most therapists that I hang around with myself are optimistic because we can see a future hoped for our clients. And so I really feel like if we can capture the optimism that is within a person on a realistic level, that they can actually aspire to be anything. And I personally am always pushing Black clients of mine to financial freedom by either educating them. If the conversation comes up about investments, such as like stock markets and stuff like that, if it comes up, I'm always saying, yes, do it. But anyways, what else were we talking about? You know, I just plant a little seed, listen, wherever I can, and also get your own business started. Don't wait. And especially because Black people, we have a very entrepreneurial mindset, right? An entrepreneur is always saying, how can this be done better? And why are they stopping us from doing it better? And I just want to say to anyone who's listening, that is an entrepreneurial mindset. Okay. I got a shortcut and it works better. It's more efficient. Then you need to get your own. Okay. So that's like really a big thing, you know, that we don't really tap into. And so what I would say is next is examining ourselves and seeing ourselves fully, acknowledging our worth and our value in society, acknowledging that we are not in position to be as fruitful as we could be, and figuring out what your part is in accessing fruit for your family that is generationally passed down, that your kids are able to elevate themselves from the position that you left them off on, right? So I have a private practice, and the strange thing is my kids are like, what do you mean all adults have their own business? And I'm like, amen. You do it too, you too, you know? But obviously we have a conversation. That's not really how that works. Your teacher doesn't have her own business, you know, kind of conversation, but that is normalized.
We do have side hustles though.
They think, why don't they? You know,
especially in Florida.
Would you say, Chermica?
I said we do have side hustles, so not entirely true.
Always.
Well, I mean, everybody can have a little side business, but I'm just speaking to the fact that they think that every adult has their own business.
Yeah.
You know, and they think that that's the normal and that's the standard that is just across the board. And I'm like, great. You know, think that way. I mean,
that's not taught in school, you know.
But
I teach my kids that about businesses, like when they come up with ideas, like, oh, that's a good business to start. You know, most teachers don't do that. Like you're teaching your kids how to be employees. So very rarely will you find a teacher that's telling kids like, hey, you can be an entrepreneur. Like, here's the different careers. Like, when we have career day, like I bring in people that own their own businesses so they can talk to the kids and give them more than just, you know, a 9-to-5 job. You know what I'm saying? So they have a different perspective.
I think that's great. When I think of where do we go from here, it kind of ties into the exercise that I was going to do, but I would say that get comfortable with what hope feels like in your body. So get connected enough to yourself physically that you can sense hope when maybe your brain isn't even aware of it. And so take some time to, for me, for example, I know hope feels like when I get like these tears like behind my eyes and my throat tightens. And I'm in a place of where I'm so close to feeling free that it almost is like a little scary, but it's also very like, it's very hopeful. That's the only way I can describe it. And I get that feeling. And so get comfortable with what is behind that sensation. For me, it's when I know someone else or a group of people are taking a step towards more freedom. That's when I feel hope. And so that's how
thing to say.
What did you say?
That's a therapist thing to say.
I'm such a therapist. I can't help it. I mean, my friends, they know me. I know my friends are like, April's a therapist. In just my normal conversations, it is who I am. It is. It's a part of me, and I have learned that. I am now in the right profession. Teaching, it was fun, and I think I was good at it, but it didn't give me that. It didn't give me that feeling that I described of what hope feels like in your body, because we need that. If we don't have anything in life, we need to know that there's something good ahead again. You know, this may be rough or that may be tough, but there's always some type of, it reminds me of like a growth mindset type of thing. But yeah, that's what I would say.
There is hope, April. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if other people in other professions really feel that when someone else is doing something. I feel.
Yeah, no, I think it's different for different people. What I'm saying for me,
I love that feeling when it's like when I see someone else getting it, it's like, oh man, there we go. We are going forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I really think if every person can find out what is that thing or what are those things, I mean, just keep juicing that, you know, keep doing that. And because I think too, sometimes it even surprises me. Like I'll be like, okay, I know this feeling. This means I'm in a place of hope. Like, I didn't think that, you know, seeing a little kid eat some ice cream would do that, but maybe the child is Black and he's at the park and I feel like, oh my word, look, he looks free right now. He's just playing, eating some ice cream. Like, I love that for little kids. And so it's just, I get that.
I get that, I guess, a sense of excitement when I see people doing stuff out of the norm and they just liberated. You know what I'm saying? Like people dancing on the street and they don't care about what anybody thinks. It's just their therapy. They're out there just having a good time. Or somebody, you know, I don't know, barefoot on a skateboard, you know, little brown boy, he's just riding as free as ever, just having fun. You know what I'm saying? Just living free. I think that is, I guess, a sense of hope and enjoyment and watching somebody else have their freedom, enjoy their freedom. You know? That is.
Like it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Priceless.
I love like seeing brothers in the hood ride y'all know, like the little hood, like the like they're not dirt bikes, but they're not motorcycles. Y'all know, like a couple people. I don't know.
The mini bikes.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and
a moped?
Yeah, that was my next question. You talk about a moped group?
They look like the Batmobile.
They're like mini bikes.
They look like what Batman rides around in. It's like it doesn't have a covering at all, but they got like the wheel.
They're bigger tires. Yeah.
They literally look like a Batmobile, and I just love seeing them. Or sometimes they'll be on a motorcycle, and I just love seeing that, like, a brother be free, because you see so many images otherwise. Either they're in jail, you see them being hemmed up by the police, or you see a mugshot, or you see them at, you know, in court off of some child support stuff. And so when I see, you know, a brother being free, for me, I'm just like, I love that. Or like you said, like with Black children just playing and living their lives and being able to be children and not be viewed as adults, you know. I think we should probably come together at another time and just really talk about the freedom of Black people and what does that look like from a mental health perspective? What does that look like lived out? Because it seems like that's where kind of the discussion is going, is how do we find freedom in the midst of our circumstances? What does that look like for us? So I really think that that would be a really good discussion just for us to dive into and dig into. And I love what April said about having an identity with what is hope for you, because I think in a very real way, that's what 2020 was for me and for a lot of people. I think it was sort of this year of like, I cannot play games anymore, especially if I'm still here. If I made it through all the stuff, if I made it through COVID and I'm still standing and I haven't, you know, had my life taken by the police or, you know, all these other, you know, systemic things that are put against us, I really need to start living more purposefully. And so I love the fact that that's what that year has done. And for me, it's bringing to light information that I know people aren't talking about and trying to meet people with real resources to help them get along. Because again, I've just seen so many gaps in my life where resources were needed. And I know in other communities, there are these resources in abundance. But I know for people who are like us, they are not in abundance. And so what can I do? Like you were just saying, Tenisa, that's where my mind goes to. How can I put something together to put this in front of people? That's my contribution to the world, to say this was lacking in my life. How can I put something together so that it's not lacking in someone else's life? That's the whole reason why I started ChatwithCharli, was just to be like, I know there are other people struggling in this regard. I know it for a fact. So let me just do something to get the word out there to people for hope and for understanding and for clarity. So yeah, I think there is a new day coming for Black people. And I think these conversations are sort of pushing the needle forward and doing something. And so, yeah, it's just an exciting time. Yeah.
That is, I love it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. There's a lot of things stirring that I've never seen amongst our people. Both just entrepreneurship, whether it's a desire to be free from the corporate plantation, or to go out and just train their children in a way that they were not trained, or engage in their children in a way that they haven't been engaged. I think there is a new awakening and a new liberation coming to the people. So I just want to do whatever I can to encourage that, and, you know, stir it. You know what I'm saying? I want to stir it as much as possible to make sure that we don't retract. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we put in the resource guide as a where we go from here, we said find mentors, find a therapist. Okay, we have Tenisa on this session. We'll have her information. Yes, we'll have her information, and then also Rhonda, active therapist as well. Join Black affirming spaces, whether that might be Facebook groups or places on Instagram, local clubs that you find through Meetup or whatever. And then we also have Cultivate Joy, like April was saying, identify places or things that you do that will help you to find hope. Where are you finding hope, and continue to press those issues and lean into that, and identify a good, solid support system. And the resource guide that we have available, which is a PDF document, is just full of resources that people can, you can follow up on, local organizations, national organizations, books, videos, that stuff. And then also, Chermica, we have linked to your Instagram page on the resource guide as well. She was recently featured in a podcast, just sharing her experience in finding hope and healing after a divorce. So a lot of the panelists have things going on that have been linked in the resource guide. April, you want to follow if you have anything?
That is everything. Yeah. So the resource guide is on the website right now, or it's going to be on there?
It's going to be.
Or they should email you or something.
Right. So it's going to be, I'll probably find a place on the website to just kind of plot, honestly, the resource guide and the Zoom recording so people can just go at whatever time.
Okay.
Find it and download it. But for the people, there were a couple people who registered last minute, like right before we started at 1:30. An email will be sent to those people with the resource guide attached to it as well. So yeah, we really want people to be able to take this conversation and have applicable things that they can move forward with. So yeah, I think again, this has been a great time, and we should follow up with something in another couple of weeks, just talking about for what does freedom look like for Black people.
Love it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
This is great.
Yeah.
Such a blessing.
Enjoy your Saturday evenings.
Yeah, thank y'all for putting it on and just kind of doing all of the background work to make this thing happen. This is so important for our community. And I think going forward, I think the conversations need to continue to stir. We have it in our community. They have it, somewhere in, Atlanta, Miami, North Carolina, and it just continues to stir and encourage our people throughout the nation and the world at large. So I think we need this, and we need to continue to persevere through in order to make sure these type of things are happening for the community. So thank y'all again.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, I guess that ends it for our virtual Black Family Forum. So much good information. Yes, everybody give yourself a round of applause, man. It was just such a good time. A Saturday well spent. We have definitely emptied ourselves. So everybody get some good. Tenisa, you got your day off tomorrow. Were you going to refuel?
Definitely.
Yes, yes. So everybody definitely take care of yourself. And yeah, just be blessed. And until next time, we're all signing off. Thank you, guys.
All right. Till next time.
All right. Now. Peace.